But I know you're last thing I don't know is
Mrs. Thomas here.
Yes.
Good evening. I'd like to call the April 18th, 2022 meeting of the University Heights City Council to order. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs? Here. Mrs. Blanco? Here. Mr. Rock?
here.
Mrs. Wise? Here. Mr. Gould?
Here.
Mr. Cooney? Mr. King?
Here. Is there a motion to excuse Mr. Cooney?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Gould, second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs? Aye. Mrs. Blanco? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye. Motion carries. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is reading and disposal of the journal. Could we have a motion to table the April 4, 2022 minutes?
So, second.
Motion by Mr. Gould, second by Mr. Rock. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs? Aye. Mrs. Blanco? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, that set of minutes are tabled. There are two other sets. A motion could be entertained for March 22nd regular meeting, March 24th special meeting. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to review those. Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. I did notice some typo and some errors in the March 22nd minutes, but I didn't get to review them until this afternoon, so Mrs. Kelly did not have time.
Why
I
don't
would think.
we move to table those then?
Please, I move to table the March 22nd minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to table the March 22nd, 2022 regular meeting minutes by Mrs. Sachs. Is there a second?
So the meeting's on the 21st.
I thought it was the 21st.
Yeah.
I didn't.
21st. Okay, yes, that's,
It's
Yes.
right in the header, but not on.
Well, motion to table.
The first meeting that week.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
I only know because it was my birthday.
That's right.
I'm East Point.
Well, I'm sure
11:30 that night? Was the 11:30 meeting?
Wasn't that long.
Very good. Well, then we'll say the regular meeting, March 21st, 2022 by Mrs. Sachs.
Yes.
Motion table. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sachs? Aye. Mrs. Blanco? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, those are tabled, which must mean the special meeting was March 23rd. Is there a motion to table those then?
Also move.
Okay, motion to table the
I'll
March
second.
23rd.
I have a couple comments.
2022 special meeting minutes by Mrs. Blankfeld, second by Mr. Rock. Before we take the vote, Mr. Rock, you have the floor.
Yes, Mayor. There's just a couple typos, just with my name, maybe something with the sound system and it transposed it. So anywhere where it says ROCK, just do a word search, make sure I see it. So I'm assuming that happened on its own.
Yes, okay. And Mrs., or not Mrs., but rather Councilwoman Stevens is STEPHENS. We can make a note. I think there were some other things too we got to look at, but we have a motion to table that. Mrs. Thomas, we call
Mrs. Sachs? Aye. Mrs. Blanco? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Aye. Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney? Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, those minutes are tabled. We will now go to additions and removals from the agenda and referrals to committee. Are there any additions, removals, or referrals? All right, seeing none, we will then move on to comments from the audience. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. If you would like to address the city this evening, please come up to the podium, speak directly into the microphone so that you may be recorded, and you may start with your name and your address, and then you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Neil Martin. I live at 2411 Saybrook Road, University Heights. Been there for a little over 20 years. I am if I look familiar, I'm a ceramic artist and you've seen me at King Park. All right. I am part of Artful, which is one of the businesses that are nonprofits that are in the building at the corner of Coventry and Euclid Heights. It's the old school building across from the library. Many of you may know, but perhaps not all of you, the second story is completely filled with artist studios, and we are up. Mr. Mayor knows because he's attended some of our events. Thank you. And we had some developments happen. I would like to read to you a message I have been sent with from the Coventry Peace Inc., which is the overreaching, call them the managers of the groups within the building. And I'm a part of a group called Artful, as I said. And they are currently at the meeting of the library, so I've been asked to come over and read this for them. Coventry Peace Inc.'s mission includes providing a sustainable, supportive, and collaborative facility for the arts and the community service nonprofit businesses located in the former Coventry School building. I'm here tonight representing Coventry Peace and partner tenant organizations in an effort to ensure the continued progress of establishing a permanent nonprofit. Coventry Peace has notified the Heights Library Board members of our desire to purchase the building. The library's refusal to continue its partnership with Coventry Peace is putting the entire project in jeopardy. CPC's, Coventry Peace, independence from the library is the most viable path forward and ensures the success of this community's supported project. The library has moved forward with repetitive facility studies at a cost of $14,575 and is in the final stages of approving the contract with an outside facilities management company at a base cost of $2,750 per month. Work performed by that company, which submitted the highest of all the bids received, would be billed hourly on top of that. CPC has provided most of the same services at no cost to the library for the last 4 years. In fact, CPC and library staff has discussed outside management in 2018 and again in 2020. The library staff agreed at both of those times that it was unnecessary. No clear reason has been given for the abrupt change in 2021. No clear reason has been given for the abrupt change, and our efforts to discuss these matters with the library have been rebuffed. Since the library board voted against the long-term lease, the library has imposed a 25% rent hike for CPC and plans to pass the costs of the private management company into the tenants via significant rent increases. The consequences of these decisions have been made it much more difficult, if not impossible, to convert prospective organizations into permanent tenants, and could result in several current tenants leaving the building or shuttering altogether, placing the entire project in jeopardy. There is still time to mitigate the damage caused by the library board's misguided decisions. CPC purchasing the building from the library would solve all of the parties' problems. While the Coventry Peace Campus project was formalized 5 years ago, many of the tenants have been working towards the same goal for much longer, and the residents and community made it clear more than 10 years ago that this was how they wanted to see the former school building used. CPC's independence was always part of the plan. In 2018, Heights Library Executive Director Nancy Levin told Patch, "Our goal is for the tenants to be independent. We don't want to be landlords. We would be acting as a kind of incubator, supporting the tenants until they can take over ownership of the management of the property themselves." While the library board declined the opportunity to do just this at the beginning of the year, CPC's proposal to purchase the building is a solution from which everyone will benefit, and one that can bring our organizations together again as partners serving the entire community. It allows for the library to devote its time and financial resources on its priorities, and CPC to maintain and improve the building as an arts and community center with rents affordable to the members of that sector. Your support in urging the library to meet with us to discuss the proposal would be greatly appreciated. We would also welcome your letters of support. This offer is a win-win for the library, for our nonprofit collaborative, and for the residents we all serve. It is a way for us to keep the peace. I have copies of this. I don't believe I brought enough, but maybe you can share.
I think I got one via email, so if you don't have it now.
And I think everyone here has been emailed that same email. I'm not sure about that. Should I hand these out or just? Thank you very much for your time. If I have any time left, I would like to add that.
Go ahead for another minute.
Thank you. 4.5 years ago, I built a ceramic studio in the building. I have 4 other ceramic artists working in my space currently, and we do seminars and we do classes, and this is a dream project of mine, and I have invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into it, knowing that this was not a profit-making endeavor. This was an artistic endeavor, and it was done in Cleveland Heights because Cleveland Heights wants to be a center for the arts. All of that is in jeopardy, as well as my entire studio and my entire investment. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I'm just going to take a moment, though, to address that, if you don't mind. As mayor of University Heights, and as somebody who has followed this story for some time, and admittedly, as a former board member of Future Heights, familiar with the years of what it took to get to where you are now. I do recognize, and I think most folks here, hopefully all folks here, recognize that though this property is located in Cleveland Heights, it is just as much in the interest of residents and leadership in University Heights to see this succeed if possible. And that this is something that augments not just the Cleveland Heights community, but the University Heights community and the greater community in general. I know there are numerous people besides yourself who are from University Heights who use the facility, not the least of which is our own University Heights Symphonic Band. But certainly not just them and not just you. So I did not necessarily see coming the release today, but I'm hopeful that a way is found to see the Coventry Peace Campus succeed and thrive. So thank you for coming here today. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Martin?
Thank you very much. Oh,
This is
Perhaps, I'm not sure you can answer this, but, I'm not that familiar with it. And I probably will reach out to Nancy Levin just to ask what that side of the story is. It seems compelling, but, I'm just curious. So I may circle back to you if I have questions after that conversation.
please circle back to me, and I might have questions for you because the library has.
I'm not putting myself in the middle, but I, before I put my name to something, I like to
Absolutely.
explore what it means. Thank you though for coming tonight and sharing this with us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and just to echo what Mrs. Sachs said, I would encourage anyone to reach out to the library board as well. But if you haven't been to the Coventry Peace Campus, I would encourage you to take a visit, take a tour, arrange with someone, and learn everything you can from all sides with respect to what's going on over there. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to address the city this evening? Well, seeing none, then we will move on to the reports and communications from the mayor and taking of action thereon. With a presentation from Power a Clean Future Ohio, I will keep this brief. On Wednesday, April 6, 2022, we held a joint meeting of the city governments of University Heights and Cleveland Heights, the Heights Library Board, and the CHUH School District. In addition to all four governments and boards presenting on work each was doing to move the community forward, and I incorporate my report from that evening here and by reference, we had a meaningful discussion on Heights career tech and on concerns raised by an organized group of survivors of sexual violence here in the community. My thanks to the University Heights Council members in attendance that evening, Michelle Weiss, Barbara Blankfeld, Justin Gould, and Brian King. The next two joint meetings are set for Wednesday, June 29th, 2022, and Wednesday, October 26, 2022, both at 6:30 p.m. at the Cleveland Heights Rec Center. On Tuesday, April 12, 2022, I joined Cleveland Heights Mayor Khalil Sarin for an interview and discussion on local government sustainability and environmental justice. This forum is available on YouTube through the Cleveland Heights University Heights chapter of the Greater Cleveland League of Women Voters. There was much to say, and if you have not seen it, I encourage everyone here to view it. I said I would keep this brief, and so that concludes my report. Next is reports and communications from the City Council and the taking of action thereon. Mrs. Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. No report.
Very good. Any other reports from members of council? Seeing none, we will then move on to the reading and disposition of ordinances, resolutions, motions, and consideration of agenda items. Item A is a presentation by Kwame Bachwe, introducing Power a Clean Future Ohio PCFO and the benefits of becoming a PCFO community. Mr. Bachwe, if you would please come up to the microphone and you may have the floor for your presentation. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you so much, Mayor Brennan. Good evening, Council. My name is Kwame Bachwe. I am here on behalf of Power a Clean Future Ohio. I work with Power a Clean Future through a consulting company called Citadel Impact Consulting. My colleague Elena Statue was supposed to be with us this evening, but it looks like there's no two of us were surprised, so she's not able to be here. I'll be spending the next couple of minutes running through very briefly what Power a Clean Future is and what the benefit of joining Power a Clean Future will be to the city of University Heights. So first of all, Power a Clean Future. Looks like my PowerPoint is not changing. Can I get some help? Thank you. Perfect. While that is done, so Power a Clean Future is a coalition of various sustainability and climate action organizations, nonprofits, technical experts who have come together to provide support to cities all across Ohio. Because we've come to recognize that there are a lot of cities in the area who are interested in pursuing clean energy and climate action and sustainability steps, but just do not have the resources or the money or the staff capacity to be able to do all of that on their own. So Power a Clean Future was born out of the coalition. And what the coalition does is that we have a number of technical experts, as I mentioned, who have come together with various expertise providing these services to cities in the area. But I'll start with just the problem. We know for a fact that Ohio is one of the largest emitters of greenhouse gas in the country. I think the 5th largest. And we also know that renewable energy adoption in Ohio is relatively low compared to a lot of other places. So if you look at the energy grid, for instance, you'll see that only 0.6% or so of our energy generation comes from solar, for instance. So whereas this may seem like a problem, it is also an incredible opportunity to take advantage and move into the future with renewable energy and smart climate solutions. Okay, so I will not belabor the point. I think we all know what the impact of climate change is on our community. So you see the very tangible, effects that are happening with warming all across the country. You see the flooding that is happening in places. You see the health impacts that it's going to have on our residents and communities. All of these problems are there, and it's evident, and we're already beginning to see that happen all across the place. So Quiet Future, we launched in 2020, so we are just about 2 years old. And currently, as I mentioned, we are focused solely on being a resource to communities, providing climate solutions, providing sustainability planning, and other resources to municipalities across the state. Quiet Future currently has about 27 communities across Ohio. Here in Northeast Ohio, we have about 7, and we are still expanding. So part of the work that myself and my colleague do is drive that Northeast Ohio strategy and also keep communities engaged and make sure that they are plugged in to take advantage of all the resources that are provided. The resources that we provide are completely free for cities. So the city that is involved does not have to pay any money. You don't have to make any financial commitment to us to get access to the resources that we provide. The coalition is grant funded, fully grant funded, so some of the money comes from the Energy Foundation and some other local funders that help us keep the program running and making sure that we are providing these resources to the cities that we work with for free. Okay, so we have 4 policy priority areas. So we have clean energy, we have transportation efficiency, we have land use, and we have energy efficiency. So these are the 4 policy buckets within which much of our work is centered. Quiet Future, Ohio helps cities in a number of ways. So as you see here, we provide local governments and municipalities with resources to ensure that they are reducing costs. And this comes in many different ways. So some cities are going from transitioning from their fossil fuel powered vehicles to EV, and we help them with that planning, and we know that this has long-term cost implications for the cities involved. We are helping to grow the clean energy economy in Ohio through solar energy consulting for a lot of municipalities and cities in the area. We are helping to reduce emissions through local policy action that is needed. So we are working with a number of cities right now to provide some climate action and sustainability planning and providing them tangible resources that they can use to take advantage of the resources that we have to reduce their carbon emission and footprint in their communities, not only at the municipal level, but also what can be done at the level of the residents in the community. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are a coalition, so we have a number of organizations within this coalition that provide the services that we have. So I'm not going to run all over this list, but just here you can see that we have ChargePoint, we have Clean Fuels Ohio, that are some of the technical assistance that we have. We have the Black Environmental Leaders, we have the Audubon Group, Bright Energy Consultants, we have Green Energy Ohio, and a number of other organizations that are all part of this coalition, making sure that we are making these resources available to cities. Okay, before I go on, I wanted to speak briefly about this new resource that we launched. So it's called the Infrastructure Gap Assistance Program. And what we know is that the Biden government last year committed trillions of dollars to make sure that there is infrastructure development all across the country. And we know that a ton of this money is also coming to Ohio. The question becomes, and we've seen this with a lot of cities, do they have the capacity to be able to take advantage of these grants that are coming in? Do they know what specific needs are there that they can want to use these grants to meet? So we launched this program, and this program is going to be helping mayors and city governments, not just with grant application, but helping them identify what grants they can use for specific projects that they want to work on within their community. So this is also free of charge to cities that join PCF4, and this just launched last month. So there'll be a series of workshops to help identify sources. Then when cities are interested in applying for different grants, we partner with them and help them with their grant application process, and also helping them take advantage of the resources that are coming in. Okay, this is just some additional information on the IGAP and the federal dollars that we have coming into the area. Okay, so other PCF4 resources. As I mentioned, we have a suite of resources that we provide. I'll start with the Sustainability and Climate Action Planning. So At the beginning, when a city joins PCFO, we help them draw a plan because we know that there needs to be some targets that need to be set in order to get there. And I know that the mayor has committed to 30 by 30, so carbon emission reductions by 30% by the year 2030. And we know that there's already some movement that's happened, so I'll share the statistic in a little bit. The other service that we provide is we provide a fleet inventory focused on electric vehicle adoption. So we do an inventory of your current fleet of vehicles and help you figure out what is the current emission that is going on, what can you do, and what planning do you need to do that transition from the fossil-based fuel to the clean energy and electric vehicles that you may want to adopt. We also help you create canopy assessments, and all of these are geared towards helping the city figure out how you can, improve the air quality in your communities. For instance, by if you need to plant more trees, you would be able to do that. So this assessment helps in that planning and getting you there. Okay, so there are Iptv coaching sessions that happen. The Iptv coaching session takes into consideration all of the resources that we have, because we recognize that even within your community, there may be some areas that are a little more underserved than others. So how do you strategically deploy some of the resources across the community so you make sure that you are building equity and serving the community on an equitable basis? There's greenhouse gas inventories that happen. We provide technical assistance and campaign support for the community choice aggregation that happens. There's consulting services that are focused on energy efficiency. So I also know that for the city of University Heights, you are looking at looking at transforming a lot of your municipal buildings in the area. So looking at this, we feel that this could be a strategic resource for you, for instance, where we have consultants that can help you with some of the planning that needs to be done. We can help you with some of the energy efficiency policy drafts that you may need to drive that, initiative that you're embarking on. We can help in the drafting of RFPs that will go out, and even to the extent of vetting contractors that you may want to engage for some of the work that you are doing. So there's a whole list of services that we can provide to you in helping you make that, aspiration a reality for the city. Okay, the final thing I want to say is also solar market. So as many of you have probably seen on the news recently, the city of Cleveland, for instance, just announced that they were embarking on some community solar initiatives. The city of Cleveland is part of Clean Future Ohio City, and the organization that they are working with to do this work is one of the partners of Fire Clean Future. And the city of Cleveland is not the only city that is doing this. We are currently helping the city of Cleveland Heights do some sustainability planning. We are helping the city of Toledo do some sustainability planning in this area as well. We've been in conversation with the city of Solon, helping them around some of the climate action planning, and they are also working to take advantage of some of the resources that we have. Okay, so I took the liberty to pull a few statistics for the city of University Heights. So as you see from the charts that we have here, we have your emissions by sector and by source. And you can see that one of the greatest sectors by emission is the commercial buildings that you have, and also the residential buildings. So we know that that is something that we can help you with the planning for, and point you in the right direction in terms of what providers you should be speaking to and what you can do to move the needle in that regard. Okay. I also looked at how you compare to a few of the other cities in the area. And clearly, University Heights is taking a lead in this regard. So you can see that some of the cities, the emission values here that we have are, particularly high. And that could be, per capita, that could be attributed to a number of factors. But from this chart, you can see that University Heights is fairly low there. So definitely, it looks like a lot has happened here that has encouraged that, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But the good thing is that we are excited that the city is excited and wants to take intentional steps towards making these values drop even further for the sake of the residents that are here and the city itself. By the way, most of these figures that we have here you can find on the county's websites. They have resources where you can go in there and pull figures for specific cities in the area. Okay, we also saw that from 2010 to 2019, your greenhouse gas emissions dropped by 17%. which means that a 20 by 20 goal is achievable. So if a lot of intentional step has not been taken up to this point, and that pledge was made and things are moving just because of the regional work that is being done, I can see that if the City of University Heights itself makes intentional efforts to drop this greenhouse gas further, you could, hit the 20 by 20, the 30 by 30 goal and even exceed it with some of the resources that we have and some of the work that we can support you to do. Okay, I'm going to skip this. I already mentioned some of this. So we help with sustainability planning, we help with climate action planning. We have a team of consultants that can help you from the beginning, setting those plans and the goals and the targets and everything you need to do to hit those targets. I'm going to skip this as well. So the developing the plan itself, how do we do this work? Once the city agrees that it wants to join Power Clean Future Ohio, we start by the baseline assessment. So there's the greenhouse, inventory, assessment that is done. There's the fleet, assessment that is done. All of these baseline studies are done to establish where you are now. We also have this tool that we call Paint by the Pictures, where we do an inventory of what has been done now and do a catalog of what the various activities that you have now to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. And then we take it from there to plan on how you can do to reduce it even further. So I mentioned that we have a number of communities here. I think I already mentioned that, so I'm going to skip this as well. As I can see here, we have Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights, Euclid, Solar, and Lakewood, and hopefully University Heights can be the next on this list if the other heights are already here. This is a video, a testimony by Mayor Steve Patterson. I'm not going to play this now, but I'll make sure that we make this presentation available to council after this, so you can listen to this testimony on your own. Okay, so working with you, what would it take to join Power Clean Future Ohio? As I mentioned, everything that we provide within this coalition is free of charge. All that is required is that council passes a resolution to join. And as part of the passing of that resolution, we expect that some targets will be set, just so you can hold yourself accountable to something and make sure you are taking advantage of the resources that we are providing. But also in addition to that, we want a designated contact person within the city that we can work with, who can be the key person between Power Clean Future consultants and the city of University Heights. What we have seen in other places is that sometimes it's the mayor himself or herself that does that work. Sometimes the mayor designates a city staff member to be that point of contact. The exciting thing is also that we've seen examples of many communities join. So we have a draft resolution that we help out with, and then we can look over the resolution that is come up with and provide recommendations and feedback on how you can make that better. From there, we connect you to the technical resources. So we have various consultants within the coalition that we connect you with, depending on what exactly it is you want to do. So whether you want to start a sustainability plan or climate action plan, we know who within our group to connect you with, and they start the work with you. And then from there, we connect you to all the other resources that are available within the coalition. From there, we help you with your climate action and sustainability planning. And then the new thing that we are doing now is that, one, we are forming a new cohort of sustainability planning for Northeast Ohio specifically. So all the mayors and communities here coming together to learn from each other. And we're also hoping to start a community of practice where various elected officials can learn from each other in terms of what is happening in their respective cities as far as climate and sustainability planning is concerned. And we've already seen mayors ask for that. So matter of fact, recently we know that there was a meeting between the city of Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights to discuss the work that is going on in these two communities and what they can learn from each other. And while we're talking to the mayor of Solon, for instance, he also expressed the appetite to want to join something like this. So this is something that is coming online in the next couple of weeks as well. Okay, so finally, these are our contact information. As I mentioned, Power Clean Future Ohio is based in Columbus, but myself and my colleague Elena Stachu, who wasn't able to join us today, are the Northeast Ohio strategy consultants. So we act as your client managers for Power Clean Future Ohio. So if there are questions that you have, we are the people that you reach out to. If there are resources that you want to get in touch with, even after you join Powerful in Future Ohio, we are the ones responsible for making sure you take advantage of the full suite of resources. So we check in with you to make sure that you've not just joined, but you are actually doing the work that needs to be done to take to get a full benefit of being a Powerful in Future Ohio. So that would be all. I would pause. Thank you again for any questions that you have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Botchway. We appreciate you being here. I know that I've met with you before along with Ms. Statue, and it's great to hear from you. Again, the many things that Powerful Future Ohio offers to a community like ours, free of charge, to help us with sustainability planning and myriad of different areas, different approaches that we can take here. There are several that we are, obviously from the statistics that you put up from the county. Last year I took the 30 by 30 pledge on Earth Day 2021, noting that pledge was based upon 2010 numbers. We're already more than halfway there based upon things that we were doing anyway. So I'd like to think that remaining 13% is something that we could make a concerted effort to bridge the gap on. A couple different ways we can do that. One is the city government, seeing what we can do to reduce our own carbon footprint, and then also doing what we can do throughout the community so that the community itself also does that through numerous initiatives, things that we can do to encourage sustainable activities, streamlining solar, things of that nature, and probably other things that we have not fully contemplated, but which your organization has and can really give us a boost for putting us in the right direction, make some meaningful progress here in our community. So thank you for that. I think this sounds like an incredible resource to get online here in the city. And they're very thorough presentation, but there may nevertheless be questions. So if there's anybody here who has something they'd like to ask, Mr. Rump.
Thank you. Actually, I think somebody came to my door a couple days ago from your organization to decide something. So I can hear. But I guess help me out. If you go back to the slide that had the University Heights contribution to that one right there, the mission, actually the one before. Okay, so I guess help me to understand. This is University Heights in general. This is commercial buildings, residential buildings, plus city government. So this is everything. These are residents, businesses, everything.
Yes.
So I guess could you give us some low-hanging fruit, something that we could do now that would help? Because really, I feel like almost the only control we have is just our local government resources. I can't really dictate what somebody does out of their home or business at this level of government. So I guess give me some kind of low-hanging fruit, something that we could work with to help reduce some of those numbers that the local government can do, not state or federal.
Yes. So I think a good starting place is definitely getting the sustainability plan done, because that would help you, identify where the gaps are for you to reduce these greenhouse emissions. Because as I mentioned, we do the greenhouse gas assessment to help identify where the gaps are, what are the highest contributors. So this is more aggregated, but with the assessment that we do, we get to the specifics. With those specifics in hand, you can decide some of the things that you want to do. So some of the low-hanging, well, not so low-hanging, would be some of the sustainability planning that you need to do for your municipal buildings. For instance, whether it's the city council, the city hall building, for instance, an easy thing that you can do is explore ways that you can adopt solar in a place like that. And then, as I also mentioned, there's a lot of resources that are available now for some of the EV transition planning that is happening. So if you need to put a solar charging unit at City Hall, for instance, to make it easier for residents with electric vehicles to come charge their vehicles, that's also a low-hanging fruit, or something that you can do as a community to support more of your residents wanting to adopt electric vehicles, for instance. So there's a whole lot of other things that you can do, which I think experts within our coalition would be able to help you identify and help you to take advantage of.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Cool.
Thanks so much for the presentation. And I know that I've spoken to Councilman King and to Vice Mayor Weiss, and this is a topic which we're going to bring to the committee of the whole so that we can have a more in-depth conversation. But I appreciate this as an initial foray into that. For that later conversation, one of the things that I would encourage you and your colleagues to discuss and to be prepared to present on is the one point of contact idea might not be appropriate in a setting such as this, where there are different roles within our municipal government. One of the things that doesn't work very well is if you have a set of decision makers on a council and a set of administrators in an organization, and you work only with one or the other, and then all of the decision makers on the council and the legislative body implement a rule and say, go ahead, administration, do this thing. And then the administration's like, this isn't gonna work for us. Absolutely would not have any function within the administration. This won't work for us. Neither does the other, where you work only with the administration and present to the decision makers, here's how it should be, and then you get shot down and you get the policies that you really need to implement stripped out. I think there's several of us who have worked on capital projects in our kind of own lives and understand how much extra those improvements. So for instance, I'm the president of the board of directors of the LGBT Community Center of Greater Cleveland. We built a $2 million building, and we added LEED silver certification. And that additional LEED certification came at additional funding, which thank goodness came from our angel donor. I know Ms. Vice Mayor Weiss has done a much larger capital project more recently, with her own organization, and don't know what their environmental impact was or environmental planning was. But my point being that when you come to a group that is very conscious about budget, and we're looking at a municipal project now, which by all intents and purposes is going to require significant reductions from what was initially presented to us. So if we're already doing that, and then we're trying to cram as much into that budget as we can, and then you come and say, well, what if we increase the price of this project by 15% to add solar panels? It's just like, well, do I want the solar panels or do I want the kitchen for my community, right? And what I would love is not making it an either or. And I've talked to Councilman King about this. It's something that he's really engaged with, and I really appreciate his leadership on this, because I think we're at a time where it doesn't have to be an either or proposition, where the resources that you're offering can help us, key into funding that's available at different levels. And to Councilman Rock's, question, I do think that there are ways in our zoning code, in our building code, that we can implement and make this a lot easier for people to do, while also being aware of, like the city of Cleveland, you mentioned that. I'm really excited to hear what they do, especially with housing, right? So if you implement in your code that you have to have this level of sustainability in order to build, in order to improve. So you want to put in an air conditioner, you also have to do the insulation, and it has to be this efficient. My fear is that would be really expensive for members of our community, and that by implementing that great policy with demonstrable results, you would then price citizens out of upgrading their ACs. And so I'm interested to hear what cities like Cleveland Heights, who, like us, have a mix of people. We have, I think we saw online our first $1 million home going on the market on the east side of the community, and then on the west side of the community, several homes that are subject to foreclosures and other issues. So we have that economic divide. And so how can we focus those resources to those buildings that those homeowners, those citizens that may be struggling, may be working class, may not qualify for government subsidies, but also can't afford to increase their projects by 20 or 30%. Those are some things that I'd love to hear from you when we have the committee of the whole meeting. So I just wanted to share that in reflection of what you presented.
Thank you so much. These are really good insights. Thank you.
Mrs. Blankenship.
Again, as everybody has already stated, thank you for this presentation. It was enlightening. And I think the committee as a whole will be really eager to hear more in-depth information on how we can implement a lot of this and do it in a way that's also financially sustainable. I would suggest that you regroup with some of the folks that are going door to door, because hearing what you presented and hearing what the individual who was at our door Friday evening, it's very different. And, the takeaway, has looks like, well, we don't have control over any of this. This is, state or county or federal. The way it's presented, it's something that a local community a small municipality really doesn't have a lot of oversight as far as how individuals living there can make those changes. So I think it's a lot more education, and maybe just revisit how that message is being delivered, because what we heard and what I've just heard, very different.
So I'm not sure who came or not. Can you remember the organization? As I mentioned, it's a large coalition of different organizations doing different pieces of work.
It was strikingly similar,
Yeah.
but struck us both as being more a high-level thing that, being a resident, you really wouldn't be able to have any impact on. So.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Thank you. Thank you for that information. I think for us, our work is focused primarily on the small municipalities, because we know that is where usually the highest barriers are in terms of cost and capacity. So everything that we do is targeted towards those communities. We have work that we've done with various counties, but that is also a different portfolio of work. But our focus and primary resources are targeted towards communities like this one, that we know are relatively small, do not have the whole range of resources to be able to take advantage of all the things that we would like to see them do. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this very interesting and enlightening presentation today. I have a simple question. With the communities that you're working in, should we sign on, do you then come back periodically to provide maybe some metrics, baseline, a little more in detail, than what I'm seeing here, and then we have goals, and then if we're meeting those, let's say, key performance indicators, how frequent is that? And I would assume, and maybe I shouldn't assume, it's based upon whatever initial sustainability plan or strategic plan, whatever you call it, that's initially created, if you could speak to that.
I think in this case, that's definitely a safe assumption to the council.
It's
a safe assumption
okay,
to make, yes. So with Northeast Ohio now, myself and my colleague Elena will check in very regularly once you join PCFO to one, make sure that the targets that you set for yourself, you are moving along the continuum towards those targets. That is one. So there's regular communication that's going to be happening. There's going to be monitoring of the targets that you set, and the activities that we've lined up for you to go through, making sure that you're hitting all of those activities in a timely manner. So before, the team was smaller, but now the team is growing. So we are able to provide more of that really close contact with the cities that we are working with, making sure that we are in constant communication. And the thing is, we also have an open door sort of policy with the work that we do. So the city is able to reach out to us at any time with any questions regarding sustainability.
So for instance, a follow-up question, how with regard to Cleveland Heights or Sullivan and Schaefer Heights, is there a list of who those contact people are that we could reach out to them and understand their experience? And
yes, we are able to definitely connect you to people within all the communities in Northeast Ohio that we are working with. So if you have any questions, yes, you can ask.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. To address Councilman Gould said, that's why I invited Kwame to speak here this evening to start that conversation with this entire body, and then continue it with the Council Committee of the whole. Mayor Brennan did sign the Parkland Future Ohio 30 by 30 pledge last year, but I know I've spoken with other people on council who want to have a better understanding of what that means. And by having this conversation here in council, we can all have a better understanding on what we're trying to achieve and what opportunities might be available. I just want to speak to something that I'm looking forward to PCFO helping us with. Last year I had solar panels installed on my roof at home, and I had a 6 to 8 week delay waiting for a meeting with the Architectural Review Board, and could not proceed in there. And I went before the ARB, and 5 minutes. They said, this looks standard, rubber stamp, you're done. we don't have any standards about solar power in our codes. So it automatically goes to the R. So they work with other organizations like SoulSmart to help cities like ours adopt renewable energy policies that can make it easier for residents and the city itself to adopt solar power. There's a lot of money out there right now for adopting renewable energy, and I think that really dovetails well into our facility planning discussion. So I'm really eager to see what PCFO could help us, or how they could help us there, help drive down our operational expenses. But thank you for coming here today, Kwame. I appreciate you presenting to us, and look forward to continuing this conversation with the committee as a whole.
Thank you very much for uplifting that. And if I could just use 30 seconds to say more about the SourceMart. What that does is that a city is able to work with them through PCFO to get their community designated as a solar-ready community, which means is that you will be able to attract more of the dollars and other resources that are available to do some of the solar transition work that is required at the community level. So that is, I'm happy you uplifted that and brought that up. The other point is also that because we really want community voice to be uplifted in the interest of equity and inclusion in all of the planning focus, I am specifically and personally happy that you have taken this before the committee as a whole to get that community input in the early discussion that will go into passing of the resolution. So I definitely think the City of University Heights is definitely on the right track as far as what you are trying to do is concerned. So thank you again for the opportunity to present to you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Poshway. Appreciate you being here this evening, and if there's nothing further, there is a committee of the whole.
Just one more question on this one.
If you don't mind, Mr. Poshway, we take one
It's not even a question, it was another thing to look at.
Yes.
The other thing that I wanted to say is that one of the things that's very different to these other communities, I want you to look at the footprint of University Heights. We are small, and I hope that there can be some really exciting things that we can do because of that size. We can impact change on an almost universal level. I hope if we could get funding for that, get community buy-in for that. And I think that there are some things that you can do in University Heights that you can't implement as broadly in Cleveland or Shaker Heights or Cleveland Heights simply because of their size. So if you found somebody who was really interested in that type of investment, thinking solar, right, where you said, okay, listen, council, mayor, if you got X% of your city to buy into solar, we have somebody who wants to invest in that type of universal implementation. That's something really exciting that University Heights, I think, can do. And then I also think we have some large challenges, and I think your conversations with the mayor probably have talked about our sewer system and the infrastructure there. I mean, there are tens of millions there?
About 175 million.
There we go, 170, almost hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure changes that our sewer system is going to require to become EPA compliant. And I think that would be, from trying to plan that out at some point and key into the federal money is great. And the last thing I'll say is just a compliment to my colleague, Councilman King. I know that there was an entire ordinance that you had prepared and ready to go. I love the zeal and the energy that you're putting behind these environmental issues. And I respect the heck out of you for changing the trajectory of that and the way that we're bringing that, because I think together we really can implement a lot more than if we're doing it apart. And I really appreciate you kind of changing that and allowing that to go to the committee before presenting it to council as a whole.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Gould, and thank you, Mr. Boschway. There is a committee of the whole that will be scheduled, and it sounds as if you'd be welcome to come back and discuss some more with us, or with the statute or both. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you, council, for an excellent back and forth. Okay, next item then is item B, motion to extend the solid waste disposal services with BFI, Brown and Ferris Industries. Mr. Corney, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This item is regarding our solid waste disposal and transfer services. That would be all the garbage we collect in the garbage trucks is currently driven down to BFI, Browning Ferris Industries, doing business as Republic. That material goes down right now to Oakwood on Pettibone Road at the end of Cochrane Road, where Solon hits Glen Willow. Currently, we are under contract until September 30th on 2022. So we're currently paying $41.20 per ton under that contract. That contract, when it expires in September, will require renewal either now under option year number 1, or we'll have to wait until the Solid Waste District for Cuyahoga County bids out their contract, and we would join with the rest of the East Side Consortium and join that contract. So in looking at the process, I was recommending to council here today that we go with option year number 1. It represents approximately a 3% increase, which is pretty moderate for our current increases across the board in other items. And it will extend the contract until September of 2023, but by that time, we will have the results of Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District's bidding process, and if it's lower or more advantageous, then we'll be able to join their contract at that time. Otherwise, we would go back to Browning Ferris again and looking at option year number 2. Now, this isn't a guarantee. Under the contract, we're to approach them with a letter, and if they accept the extension year, then we'll continue for the 1 full year. So that's how it's going to work. If you approve a motion allowing the mayor to request BFI to extend this contract for a 1-year term.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Are there any questions for Mr. Picorni? Yes, ma'am. Okay, Mr. Rowe.
So just so I understand, to be clear, so we can go with option year 1, so extend the contract for a year, but if there's a bid with the consortium that's lower, we're allowed to withdraw from that option year and go in with the consortium, or we have to pick one now?
We will have to complete the option year and then join.
Then go, but we will already know what the next, how many years is it in the consortium?
They're generally 3 years, but the last 2 have been 2 years. This is a 2-year contract, and the new one they're bidding is also a 2-year contract.
Okay, so we can go with option year 1, but if the bid's favorable, we can go in on year 2 and 3 with the consortium, right?
The setup of the bidding right now, as I understand it, will be the same as this current contract. It'll be for 2 years with 2 option years.
Okay.
So if we go in, we will be in on the 2nd year.
Okay.
And then we will also have to, again, have the same discussion about option year number 2 and 3.
Well, we don't know what those numbers are because they haven't.
That's correct.
So what we do know is a 3% increase to just extend that year.
If BFI will accept that, yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ruck. And also, it's probably worth mentioning that in 2019, we were paying $41.90 a ton, which is more than what we've been paying the last 2 years. So while this is a 3% increase, it's going to go up 54 cents a ton. Well, it's going up 54 cents a ton over what we were paying back in 2019. And given these inflationary times, given the cost of fuel and other resources, this does seem to be, this is an advantageous, prudent thing to do, it would seem, because the figures are well in line. We don't know what the bid's going to be, but this is a number we can comfortably live with regardless through the option period ending September 30th, 2023.
That is correct. It actually represents approximately a $6,000 a year increase. We do about 5,000 tons of solid waste through this contract.
Yes, Mr. Gould.
Mr. Picorni, I don't know if you've kind of seen what's come into other areas, other communities around the state, if they've been out already, or if you've looked at other regions as it's coming in, but my understanding is that these service providers, with everything that's been going on over the past 3 or so years and everything that's going on now, they are adding in those fluctuations to the price. So you get now a base level that then fluctuates based on consumer index and other indices and issues, so that when there's a war, when there's a plague, when there's, gas prices go up for some reason, that is built in, and a municipality can see their rates increase even within the contract year based on the effects of those indices. Is that right?
I have not seen contracts like that.
Okay.
However, in history in the past, we've experienced add-ons for fuel, for example. This contract does not right now allow for fuel add-ons. However, the next one may.
Thank you. Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Picorni? And if not, is there a motion to authorize the extension,
To authorize the exercise of option year 1 of the BFI contract.
So moved.
okay, motion by Mr. Gould, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mrs. Sacks. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks.
Aye.
Mrs. Lakeville.
Aye.
Mr. Rod.
Aye.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Very good, motion approved. Thank you, Mr. Picorni. Next is item C, ordinance 2022-21, authorizing the mayor to extend the agreement for recycling processing services between University Heights and Kimball Company, and declaring an emergency. This is an emergency. I think the lead sponsor is Mr. Gould. So would you like the floor?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Very good.
Mayor, I had the opportunity to speak with Kimball regarding this potential extension. The communication that I received is outlined or detailed inside of the letter that's attached to the council packet, that they'd be more than happy to continue to work with us. I know that this entire council was concerned at the prospect of losing backyard recycling should the processor not want to work with us anymore, or should there not be a response to a bid, we should go out to that. So I put this together in concert with Mr. McConville to authorize you to extend the contract if you so chose. I do see in section 1 of this, I was able to read the red lines from last week, Mayor. I think the language, the requested change is simply to make this what the title says, which is an authorization, not a command. Is that right? I just wanted to make sure.
Well, that also puts it more in line with the original resolution 2 years ago, well, a year and a half ago, September of 2020, where it said that the city shall authorize the mayor. In this instance, it may be a distinction without a difference. I mean, I understand that the 5 sponsors here are in support of making this extension. I think that we are in a position where we don't really have a choice but to do that. So, that if you want to go with the original language, just for simplicity, I have no objection.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to make the changes you suggested. I like you said, I didn't want to make it like I'm rich on these words. They're very important because they're not to make me out of it. So I'll make those red line suggestions in section 1. I believe that these were emailed to all of us. And in section 1 of this, we will simply change the first words, the city shall, to council hereby approves the option 2. And then goes on, the paragraph will continue, extend the recycling agreement, and then we will also specify with whom the agreement is, which is with Kimball Company. I will, and then I'll make a motion to amend section 1 of the ordinance to read that.
Okay, very good. Mrs. Thomas, do you have the change that Mr. Gould has read?
Yes, but I think we will make the change. You have the original legislation.
I can go ahead and do that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, very good. All right, well, Mr. McConville has that. We have a motion then to amend section 1 accordingly by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blackfeld. Any discussion on the amendment? We'll take a roll call vote then. This is just on the amendment. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blackfeld? Aye. Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries and section 1 is so amended.
And Mayor, I'll just ask Mr. Picorni, in the same way, I hadn't thought about how this would interact with the consortium's bid as they go out to bid. I understand that. Should the consortium go out to bid with the blue bags, we will be in this contract for this period. And as we specified in the ordinance, there would be 2 ways that we can exit during or change it during the contract period. The first was if we change our method of collection from bagged to loose, we'll get the lower rate as specified in the contract currently.
That is correct.
The second would be if we switch method from backyard to curbside and they have a contractor of some type, or if we're doing the collection here and bringing it down, that we could leave the contract and cancel it completely. Is that right?
That is also correct.
And then the third thing is that just
Well, actually, I'm changing the method. I think they agreed to change to the cost of loose recycling versus bagged recycling is the way the paragraph reads.
Yeah,
I don't think it says you're completely out.
yeah, that is correct. That's correct. If we could refer everyone to Exhibit A, price sheet, page 9 of the attachment. The option year 1 bagged is $101.85 a ton. And then if we, upon 60 days notice, we could, if we have switched to loose recyclables, avail ourselves to the option year 1 rate for loose recyclables, which is $73.20 a ton.
And then Mayor, looking at the top of do you have the chart there of those rates? There's a red line portion of the chart, and I believe it's underlined, and it makes reference to, let me find this, I have to pull it up. It makes reference to, maybe for, I thought there was also, yeah, no, there's a separate section. Do you recall the section of the contract which I'm referring to? It's in the first, have this in there as a section that allowed us to cancel it in its entirety.
That paragraph, I believe, has to do as we change to private contracting.
Okay,
So we contract outside.
Yes.
We have the ability to cancel this contract completely with 60 days notice, I believe.
Thank you. Okay, that's what I wanted to just, so it's if we change to an outside contractor for the collection of our waste and recyclables, such that we would not need to bring it to the MRF for processing, we would be able to cancel the contract in its entirety.
That is correct.
Okay.
And that was because that was all on the table at the time.
Okay. And so then the final method by which we would be able to terminate would be if, or not really terminate, but at the end of our first option year, if for some reason the consortium gets a bid back on blue bags that's more advantageous to us, we can join that in the second regular year of that contract?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Nothing further.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gould. Any other questions or comments?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2022-21 as amended on emergency.
Okay, we have a motion to approve ordinance 2022-21 as amended on emergency by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sacks. Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. King.
Thank you. While I agree that this is the only option we have right now, I think that it also means we're just kicking the can down the road again on improving our method of collection. We have the recommendations of what's out there, the EPA, the Ohio EPA, the Solid Waste District, in our very own study by GT Environmental recommends that we go to curbside collection. And in the presentation that we had at the last council meeting by Beth Raymer, she showed that our current collection method is akin to something from 1995. I'd like to see us take a step into the present. And for now, I think this is the only thing we can do at this time is to ask this.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. King. Mrs. Sines.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. Thank you, Councilman King. With all due respect, I believe that even though that was a very informative presentation by the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, their report card is very clear that they failed to show with curbside and automated collection, 2/3 of the county still performs at less than 13%, which is only 2% greater than Pepper Pike that has backyard collection with blue bags. Shaker Heights is 10%. Backyard collection loose. I think we can do better. I've demonstrated that. I've followed pages 31 to 35 of the solid waste of the 2020 solid waste analysis, the study, and there are recommendations in here for continuing backyard collection that can improve our recycling rate. The best practices that Shaker Heights and Pepper Pike do with their backyard collection. I haven't heard whether or not we're going to consider any of those, but those which really don't cost much, we could get grants, which was verified by the presenter from the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District, would make it affordable, and we would see the benefits, we would reap the benefits of reduced rate if we do consider implementing backyard loose recycling. So I think we've made the case repeatedly in the Service and Utilities Committee meetings. And I would encourage you to, we can have a conversation about that some more, if that's not clear. But I do hope we can have a conversation with administration about implementing some or all of those, or any of those. Even if it means, like one of the recommendations is education and awareness. We have only seen postings to the residents through the Friday wrap-up, for instance, when I've personally asked Mike Cook to put it in. I haven't seen it since or before, or in the mosaic, except when I asked. Our website still shows the sustainability page, not updated from 2016. Our routes, which is also one of the recommendations, has not been updated since 2004. So there's plenty we can do that doesn't cost anything, that could cost, or not very much, to get started. We can get started and put our finger in the dike from all the, flooding that could come through, and work together to make those improvements with what we have now. Whether or not that will change in the future, we'll see. But let's look also at the 2021 solid waste study, solid waste district report card, and let's compare everybody, not just University Heights, which has gone backwards from 5% to 4%. Let's see how those curbside collections are doing. Thank you, though, for your continued discussion. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mrs. Sacks.
May I quickly respond?
Yes, Mr. K, you have the floor.
I just don't see the value in investing in our current method. It's like putting lipstick on a Kubota. I've looked at what the grant landscape is for recycling programs. Almost everything is for carts, for 64-gallon and larger carts, and not the smaller carts that would be necessary if we were to maintain backyard collection of recycling. I verified that there are grants that are only available for those. The recommendations of the organizations such as the Ohio EPA, they say that curbside recycling is the method. I just don't see us getting grants to continue our current collection method.
Beth
Thank you, Mr.
Higgins-Raymer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Beth Higgins-Raymer is the one who told me, when I spoke to her before the presentation, that there are hundreds of thousands of dollars, $200,000 in reimbursement that's available for upgrading equipment. And that, I can't remember if it was...
It's from the Ohio EPA. It's a
Ohio
very
EPA.
competitive grant, and
Okay.
I would not see us being a contender for that with 18-gallon bins.
I'm a grant writer, I'm not sure what you base it on.
Well, it's based upon the fact that these grants are competitively scored, and the EPA has made a policy decision to encourage containerized recycling done in carts curbside. And they are granting grants based upon those proposals which are in furtherance of the policy that they are endorsing. So I would have to agree with Mr. King. I don't expect any grant to be successful based upon what you're describing.
So we go ahead and we put the rubbish collection to the curb. Where is the proof that our recycling is going to improve? If 41 out of 59 communities can't even increase much more than Pepper Pike, which is backyard. We're going to invest all of that and change and not ask our residents if that's the type of service they would like to exchange for something else or nothing else, and then not get significant results. I'm not sure that case has been made.
Mayor?
I think we should.
Mr. Gould?
Thank you. I appreciate the back and forth on this issue. I was able to listen to the sustainability conversation that was had with Future Heights with Mayor and Mayor Sarah. I was thinking, of course, as you were kind of talking about the recycling issues at the beginning and how Cleveland Heights has switched over to this new system and how we have not. About my head as a decision maker, I still want the survey, but that's still something that I want. I still want the survey. And I know that the mayor said it's junk, data and won't send it out in its current form. And one of the things that I heard Mayor Soren talk about was the sustainability committee that Cleveland Heights said. And it was interesting when I heard him talk about it because he said, we have this study, we knew it needed to be done, everyone else has done it, and my council wanted to go and put this into a committee, and you know what happens with committees. What I appreciated about the position that he took at that time, despite the fact that he disagreed with what his decision makers were asking for, was that he allowed that process to go forward. And Cleveland Heights is in a different position, I think, because of that. And while I appreciate that if you, Mayor, were making this decision, you would not want this data, while I appreciate that the position the administration has taken is that it has the capacity not to sign the contract and will not send out the survey because it has the purview to do that and it thinks it's junk. The people who you are asking to change their vote to vote for a change in collection from backyard trash pickup to curbside trash pickup disagree. And without that data, will not change their decision that the backyard method of collection of solid waste and recycling in University Heights will continue. And if you would like us to revisit that, I, myself, someone who has said multiple times, I want the survey, am willing to revisit backyard versus curbside once I've had the opportunity to review that data, but not before.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. Mrs. Michael.
I have to agree with Mr. Gould. Ultimately, this decision should fall to our residents who are paying these taxes for these services. And until I hear from them that they wish to make this change and pay for this change, then I have no impetus to change my way of thinking. I represent them. And we are stewards of their tax dollars. So until I hear from the residents through that survey.
Well, Mrs. Blankfeld, I'm going to respond to both of these last comments. We didn't survey the residents before we began discussing here exercising option year 1 to start paying $101.85 a ton to process recyclables. Nobody's paying more than that. And it's an unprecedented amount of money that we're going to be spending. So when I hear responsible steward of taxpayer dollars and we're going to spend about $102 a ton, that doesn't go together.
Well,
We have, I'm talking right now, thank you. We have, no survey is going to change what's going on in the world when it comes to methods of pickup, when it comes to what the best practices are with regard to collection of recyclables. These are things that we heard at the last meeting from Elizabeth Biggins-Raymer. We heard extensively that the best practice is the containerized curbside method for picking up loose recyclables. And whether we issue a survey and ask residents what they think about that, it doesn't change that fact. It doesn't change the fact that the world has moved on and University Heights has not kept up.
May I respond?
Yes, you can afford it.
I still stand by the fact that the residents will ultimately be paying this. And until I hear from them that they wish to change it, the amount that we discussed about the contract for the solid waste, it is not $250,000 for bins that have not been proven to increase recycling. How it gets from my door to my curb, whether it is the present way I do it, or if it's in a fancy little bin, it's not going to change because you recycle only as much as Cuyahoga County permits you to recycle. There's lots that goes in the rubbish because it is deemed not recyclable in Cuyahoga County. So, to Mrs. Sachs's point, and to the study's point, it needs to begin with education. I don't think you can ask people to have their tax dollars spent that way or to make these major changes that a lot of people are not going to want until you've educated them to increase their knowledge on how they can recycle. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are doing the wish cycling. Well, it's got a mark on the bottom, it says it's recyclable, and in it goes, and it just renders the whole thing trash. So, to Mrs. Sachs's point that she's made again and again, these efforts have to begin with education. I think you would agree. We've got all sorts of vehicles the city has for spreading those messages, and we should take advantage of that. I mean, if we can make our residents better educated on how they can participate, then that level may increase. But I haven't seen that yet, so.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Michael. Mrs. Sachs.
Two things. Thank you, Mayor Brennan. Thank you, Councilwoman Langfeld. So number one, let's move forward with loose recycling. We are entering a contract. We're in 60 days from tomorrow. If we put in loose recycling at the backyard, we'll reduce our rate. Once we sign that and it goes into effect. So that's number one. I would hope the administration will get started. Second thing is actually something that Councilman King wrote recently on social media got me thinking. I've really been thinking about this, the survey. So if I understand correctly, Mayor, you do not wish to send out the survey because it doesn't have a cost benefit analysis. It doesn't have anything about the cost of backyard versus curbside recycling.
It asks no questions on costs, that's correct.
And so, but what Councilman King wrote was by changing our method, it will reduce the number of staff needed for rubbish collection, which that's the real cost savings, but redeploy them to doing other tasks in the city. Do I understand that? Did I read that correctly? Do I understand that correctly? That we're not cutting labor force, we're redeploying them within the same department. Do I understand that correctly?
I don't know. Mr. King, did you want to respond?
It's what I stated, yes.
Okay.
But,
And Mr. Kennedy so that means that the cost will stay the same in the same department, just on a different line, correct?
I believe so. I'm not aware of what the details on it. But
And Mr. Picorni is asking for 2 additional service people. Is that correct, Mr. Picorni?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're looking at increasing the number of service personnel. It's not reducing the cost. Perhaps there is a cost savings with the method of trash collection, which there is. It's $700,000 plus the miscellaneous, about $1 million. But about 3/4 of that is just moved around to another place. So I was thinking about it, and I would like to see the job descriptions, or at least a list of the tasks. So when people ask me, what's the service going to look like? What's the exchange of service? What is not being done in University Heights right now that will take 4 to 6 FTEs, full-time equivalents, employees, service people, to do that's not being done today? What is around the city? So I would be interested in seeing that. I don't, you can do it now, or you can.
Mr. McCrory, would you like to?
And then I'm not quite done.
Okay.
So that if that's the case, the customer service survey is not really being held up because of a question missing about cost. It's really being held up because wouldn't we want to know from our customers, our residents, would you prefer us spending this money? It's not going to be a taxpayer savings. Would you prefer us spending this pot of money to continue the backyard trash collection, or would you prefer us bringing it to the curb and getting all these other services that 4 to 6 personnel are going to be providing? I think that's the real question here. And I think also that's much more tangible because people can then say, well, I think that makes more sense. I'd like to see whatever it is, A, B, and C, being done that 4 to 6 people can do to improve service in our city. But the question about cost that's missing is not a real question. The real question is, what is the service that we're asking the residents, our customers, that they would prefer to receive? Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. McCrory, perhaps you could address the point about the outside contractors we use for an array of services that our own employees don't get.
If I may, I'd like to address some of the questions about personnel to begin with.
In fact,
Because I think
you may address all the things.
I think it's been twisted several times. We had a conversation that was about automated recycling and what we would need on the truck in the way of manpower to do automated recycling. And at that time, we were talking about 2 additional people to do that, but it didn't mean we were adding 2 additional people to the staff for that. The 2 additional people to the staff that I was requesting at the beginning of the year had to do with road repairs, it had to do with landscaping, it had to do with more people at the park doing the things we needed to do when we took on the responsibilities of the park. So that's what I was asking for the additional people for, not for rubbish. Okay, we back up. The study, 6 people you keep pulling out. The study had indicated that you could reduce your staffing on the carts, on the rubbish trucks, and on the route in general, right, by automating. you're going to run less routes, you're going to have less people doing it. At that time, the response to council was we would do it through attrition. We never talked about firing anybody to do this. So it was going to be through attrition that we would lose those positions. So if we were to automate in this conversation that we're having today, we could do it, still reducing staff, but reassigning them to automated trucks and still end up with extra people to do the part, possibly. However, right now, we hire contractors to do catch basin cleaning. We hire contractors to do repairs of sewers, laterals, and things like that. We hire contractors every once in a while to do road repairs, or as you've seen over the last 4 to 6 months, road repairs go undone until staffing changes during the summer when we have more time possibly to reduce what we're doing in other areas to allow us to do the road repairs. So all of those things could be done in a much more timely manner if we had the proper staffing. And that's why I was asking for the 2 additional people.
Yeah. Were you done, Mr. McCormick?
For Mr. McCormick. Okay, so
Mr.
the question that Ms. Sachs was asking is what service would we gain by asking all 14,000 residents to wheel their carts to the street? What would we gain? And you're replying with, well, we'll get road repair, sewer repair, all these things. But we're doing that now anyway. So what do we gain? Like, I want to hear what's something that we don't have in the city that we're going to get out of having to lug the carts to the street 52 times a year.
Well, you will also get your catch basin in front of your house repaired maybe in a couple of weeks rather than several months.
Okay, so, but I'm going to get it done in a couple months. What am I going to get that I have to give up something? Now I have to take this out 52 times a year, bring it back. What am I getting that's new?
What else would you like?
That's what we need to hear. That's what I want to know.
Well, I don't know
That's
if
what I'd like
this
to
is
know.
for Mr. Pecorian to answer, but I would propose using some of that money to enhance senior services. But I want to go back to September of 2020. We made a presentation at a public meeting where we talked about some of these very same things, and we talked about numbers. And you know, I'm just going to read from my prepared notes, because there's no reason to paraphrase. I can say exactly what I said a year and a half ago, which is, to be clear, this is not merely about saving money, though we will. This is about improving service. Our service department, liberated of picking up trash 4 days a week, would now be free to work more efficiently on all of their other projects and tasks described earlier. Road repairs would be made in days, not weeks or months. Sewer repairs, the same. Work that we previously privatized, our contract for emergency repairs, our tree program, our mainline sewer televising and cleaning programs. Portions of these programs could be moved back in-house. For example, in 2019, we used our emergency repair contractor for 3 storm sewer lateral repairs, 11 catch basin repairs, and 13 roadway repairs at a cost to the city of $91,323. What was the emergency that required the use of the emergency contractor? Time. The fact that we were out of time. All those repairs we could have done in-house, we just didn't have the time. Our service department picks up trash 4 days a week, minimum, because special pickups are usually caught up on the 5th day. And that is one of the things that you didn't factor into your numbers, is the fact that, for instance, in 2019, we hired an on-site contractor and spent over $91,000 having to do work we could have done in-house, if only we had the people or the time. And since we don't have either the people or the time, every year since I've been mayor, we have this ritual where orange barrels and orange cones pop up all over the city. And they're there. They're all spring, they're all summer, and then we come into the fall. And then we want to get this stuff fixed before winter. We don't want plow trucks out there trying to dodge cones, even though that did happen. And what we do is we end up bringing in the emergency contractor and spend tens of thousands, sometimes 6 figures, catching up on stuff that we are perfectly capable of doing in-house, but don't have the time to do and don't have the personnel to do. And that is one of the things that could be gained. It is the opportunity cost of having the people here to do the work. The work is here, but we don't have enough people and we don't have enough time to do all the work. We end up paying more money out to outside entities, calling it an emergency because we're out of time. And it isn't just a matter of convenience about whether a catch basin is there for a few days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Sometimes these are repairs that, even when they're marked off, and are road hazards and become emergencies. We've had to pay out claims because people have hit things that were in the road that were there like that, and the city was aware of it for some time. And we shouldn't be running the city like that. We don't have to run the city like that. And this is a way of right-sizing what we do as a city so that we are spending an appropriate amount of time doing the solid waste pickup and handling, and then doing all the other things that we expect our public service department to do or just need to be done, but they can't get to. And this is the crux of it, is being able to take care of certain things in-house that we haven't been able to do, and that is the big part of where the savings is. That isn't even in the solid waste study. That's simply looking at how we spend our time with this department, what our employees are doing, and what all the work is to do, and then looking at the line items for all the emergency work that we've agreed can be done, and then we actually have to do. And that is what we ought to be looking at. Those are things that we need to be considering when we look at this. And we can either hire more people or we can adjust what the labor is that is needed on solid waste pickup so that we have freed up people to do this work. Mrs. Weiss.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Picorni, I just want to, again, I know we went over this many, many times, but when you're talking about 4 to 6 people through attrition, when you stated we can reassign them, so we're not letting those people go through attrition because those 4 to 6 people are going to be reassigned. On top of it, we're going to have to pay for our garbage new company, new vendor to come and pick up the garbage, like Kimball or whatever, correct? Like those 4 to 6 people.
I'm not sure I understand.
We're never going to save on employees.
The 4 to 6 people that are being mentioned was part of the study, correct?
Right. Yes.
And again, you refer back to the study constantly as to what they said they could do. I don't necessarily think 4 to 6 people is the actual number, but you could debate that, and we could bring our consultant back in, and he can identify how he did those numbers.
Well, we went through that many, many times.
I agree.
My question is though,
I don't.
Everybody is talking about savings, but we're not saving because we're not getting rid of people through attrition, and we're going to have to start another service on top of it.
We will save through automation. I mean, that's been.
Not if we keep our regular staff. We were only saving through attrition.
Over time, automation will save you in many different ways. It's going to save our injuries on my guys. It will eventually reduce staffing, unless we use that staffing to improve bark, add mulching, add flowers, all the other things I've been getting emails about. So I don't know what to tell you with that.
And those service workers are still going to be in jobs where they will get hurt. Yes, they might not be lifting, but they're still going to be getting hurt. Those like workers' comp claims, the percentage is not going down if there's an actual claim possibly. But the whole point is, we keep going in these circles, but we're not getting rid of anybody. That was the only way we were saving money, and we're still going to have to purchase a service.
I didn't say we're not getting rid of anybody. I did say we could reduce staffing through attrition. I don't know that it's going to be the 6 people that keep coming up as a number. I don't believe it would be 6 people.
The other one last question that I had was, we've asked a few times, but ballpark comment, how much outsourcing do you think we do with catch basins, repairs of sewer, road repairs that our own staff cannot get to? few $100,000, $100,000?
I don't have a number for you.
Yeah, the number that we used at the September 20 meeting was $327,000.
That's
That was the number
that's-
that Mr. Percorni and Mr. Kennedy and I worked on together a year and a half ago.
It's about $1 million contract value over 3 years.
Right. Sorry. Mr. Gould.
I know that we've gone through this. I remember the meeting where the mayor made the presentation, and part of the issue that happened thereafter was that I believe Vice Mayor Weiss had asked for a breakdown of what was contract versus what we would be doing in-house, if there was any increase in the machinery or equipment that we would need or expertise that we would need in order to do that in-house, what the cost of that would be, and what the cost of the contract labor would be per hour, let's say, versus what we would pay for that per hour for in-house services. But then, and so I think there were these cost-saving issues. Then there are the issues that Councilman Rock brings up about amenities. What am I getting out of that? So you can make, the mayor at one point, but the mayor's addressing that. The mayor at one point talked about, how much beautiful our neighborhoods could be if we had hanging baskets that could be watered by our service individuals, if we had green spaces in between our streets rather than just, these aren't things that haven't been said by the administration. I don't want to suggest that, these ideas of what we could get have ever been said, and the mayor's been hiding the new idea. No, you've said these things. And so I think that's important to say. I go back then to my point about the survey. I look at Cleveland Heights' new method. And one of the things that we heard time and time again from our elders is, I'm not going to be able to bring these down our steep slopes. I'm going to break my back, I'm going to break my neck. It's hard enough to bring it down a hill. I certainly am not going to be able to bring it down a hill and maneuver it to a roadway in the middle of the winter with ice on my steep driveway. And Cleveland Heights has addressed that in two ways in their new system. One, it allows for individuals who are senior 65 and older to request a smaller bin. It may be easier for them to manage. So we don't all have to use this large bin. It could be a much smaller bin. Maybe there's a cost savings there. Maybe it's extra for small bins. I don't know. And then the second is that there's a disability program that Cleveland Heights runs where individuals who have disabilities will sign up with the city, and the service department will send out a crew, and they will wheel their 64-gallon bin, or whatever size their bin is, down to the road for them every day on trash day. That was part of the reason we wanted the survey to go out, because there were all of these issues when it came to ability and what that cost might be for University Heights. Because when we were looking at the maximum cost savings under the study, that requires us to do what the Vice Mayor said, which is not really suggested as a change, but noted, is outsourcing. The most cost savings comes from switching to Kimball or another contractor to do this. It does away with the need for a service yard, it does away for the need for a mechanic, it does away for the need of maintaining an entire ecosystem of trash collection in our small city. But that is something that seems that we are moving away from, at least from an administrative priority in the last several months. I've heard that that's not really what we're looking at. We're really looking at it as in-house collection with in-house machinery, in-house staffing, which is less of a cost savings, but still a cost savings. But then I say, okay, so with this automation, is a one run through the city? Can we do University Heights in one automated run? Are we doing it over multiple days? We had that conversation. You kind of looked at what it could be, what our outline could be. Then I asked, what is the additional cost? How much are we not saving by maintaining collection of these bins or wheeling down these bins? Do 2% of our city, 5% of our city, 10% of our city need assistance with those? Those are things that go not just to ability and to preference. We talk about this a lot about preference. What do our, I appreciate Councilperson Blanfeld's view of what do they want? Are they wanting to pay for this? Do they not want it? I appreciate it. That's frankly not my concern as much. My concern is, are they able to, have we included them in that process? And then as their elected representative, I will make that decision at the end of the day about what I think is best for the city. And I've said before on the record, I think automation is coming to University Heights. I think it's unavoidable. And I've also said, that I will not vote for that until and unless I have the data from this survey. And when I have the data from this survey, I will revisit it. Frankly, in my private conversations, I think we have 4 votes on this council to change the method of collection if we had that survey sent out. That's my vote count. I don't know if that's what ends up. I don't know what people think once the survey goes out, but according to my vote count, I think that's where we end up. So I think that when I go back to the request for that data, that is my request as a decision maker. I understand it's not happening right now. The mayor's been very clear about that position. And I don't know if there are others that would be able to send out the survey or not to get it done. Maybe the county, I know that was something maybe we could ask when they come to our meeting on the 3rd service committee. But unless and until I have that data, I don't think we have the votes on council. I know we don't have the votes on council to change it. The decision makers are not changing that method of that.
I just want to be clear, my position is and continues to be that if the questions about cost are included in the survey, then I would be happy to release the survey. The survey needs those questions. I know that we had a presentation by Beth Bacon-Framer. On behalf of the Solid Waste District, they are also willing to do a survey, but as she also expressed, questions about costs are appropriate, and their survey would also include questions about cost. And I want to remind everyone that this particular contract was controversial a year and a half ago when we passed it, that we couldn't even get the 5 votes needed to pass it on emergency a year and a half ago. And we had to float for a little while with Kimball and assure Kimball that we would sign this contract after the 1st of October, that we would please work with us on this. We had 3 people vote against it. And I appreciate that 1 or more of those 3 are probably going to vote for it this time, vote for the option, because they're all sponsors now. But the thing is that the thing that we need to do doesn't change with the survey results. We know that the world has changed. We know that the best practice has to do with using containerized pickup, having loose pickup. And I want to be very clear, Mrs. Sachs, I am not going to take time with this administration trying to fashion a Shaker Heights method of pickup in University Heights. That is the wrong direction, and nobody's granting grant money for that. I would be embarrassed to sign that for that grant. I'm not going to do that. Our focus here should be on modernization. It should be on getting to where the rest of the world is in a modern sense, and the studies nationally are that recycling improves with the larger containers. It just does.
Mayor.
I can't put any color in there, but if it's not recycled. I've been dying to ask this.
Okay, Mr. Wright, go ahead.
So I'm still confused about the numbers here. So you say 46 people, but it would happen through attrition, which could be years from now. They seem young, fit. It's probably years from now, correct? I don't know the ages of everybody in the service department, but we're hearing that if we reassign them to other tasks throughout the city, and the mayor mentioned, there's road repair, sewer repair, things that we're doing anyway, some of them we're subbing out. But then I'm also hearing that through attrition, eventually the staff will be reduced. So my question is, what happens then once the 4 to 6 people have been formally through attrition, the department has been reduced, but then we still need to do all the things that the mayor is suggesting that we do in-house. We don't have the staff for that anymore. It tells me that we will always need to maintain this level of staffing, or else we won't be doing it in-house anymore. If, for instance, 6 people retire next year, and because we're going to do this policy for attrition, then we're short 6 people to do the things that the mayor wants to do in-house. So it tells me we're never going to get ahead of this. So what do we do after the attrition? How do we do these things in-house?
Is that a question?
Yeah. How can you maintain the staffing with 6 less people?
It's not that simplified, I don't believe. If you're going to reduce staffing on your solid waste, and that's what we've been talking about, costs of solid waste, your solid waste costs for processing, everything else you're doing to haul it there is going to go down, correct?
You're saying so the staff, but they're going to be reassigned to do other
They're not
things.
going to be doing solid waste anymore.
Okay. so
Your
what are they
cost
doing?
for solid waste
So what
is
are they
gonna go
doing?
down.
That's a new amenity to the residents. This is what I asked earlier.
Your
You
cost
said
of
clean
solid waste is
sewers.
gonna go down.
I'm not asking about
Line
cost.
item in the-
I'm not asking about the cost. I'm asking about the number of people. So if we reduce the staff load for the department through attrition, but these problems still come up, I'm sure there's always going to be a sewer to clean, there's always going to be a park to clean, these things will always be there. But now we've just laid off, through retirements, the staff has been reduced. Then who will be doing those things 10 years from now?
I will come to council, just as I did at the beginning of this year, and ask for additional staffing to do the park, because you built the park.
So we will
that we didn't
never
have.
actually have a reduction in staff, it sounds like.
It depends on what you want getting done
Okay, that
around the
answers my
city. Yeah, you will reduce staff in solid waste, but you will increase staff for flower pots and beautification.
So,
Increase staff if you build a second park or another pool facility.
okay, so when residents ask me why we got rid of backyard pickup, I can tell them they're gonna get flowers on their telephone poles. Okay, for the same staff. They used to be able to just take their trash, leave it in the backyard, it's beautiful. So tomorrow's garbage day on my street, and you would never know because trash is in the back. Okay, but now the cans will be in the front, but there'll be a flower pot, from what I'm understanding.
I don't look at it.
That's how I'm seeing it.
Okay.
Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you once again. It is disheartening that we're not even going to try to do loose recycling, at least in the interim, to improve recycling and reduce the rate and at least have some cost savings. Okay?
There's no cost savings it's,
If
the
you just
study
read that
says
if we
$2 more. Go, if you, page 34 of the study, please go back
we
and look at
just
page 34 of the
approved
study.
the Kimball recycling, that if we, in blue bags, it's $110, but if we change to loose, within 60 days, it goes down to 70 some dollars. There's a savings.
Okay, all right, that's it, sorry.
Okay, I think I voted on it. Okay.
Please go
You
ahead.
didn't yet, it's still, the
Yeah, we
question
haven't actually
hasn't
voted
been.
yet.
Sorry.
You didn't yet, the question hasn't been.
Oh.
We're discussing.
Thank you. And I'm trying to think how to phrase this as nicely as possible. So there is no doubt that there is a savings with reduction in staff to automated curbside. It's over $1 million. It's a 7-figure savings over time, according to this study, with all the components. And yet, a budget was submitted that was $5 million over, 20%, and a facilities assessment is before us that's $50 million, which is probably 8 figures over. Yes, cost is important, but it's important everywhere. And yet it seems like it's picking and choosing, and this is the least cost savings of those other things that are before us. So I just wanted to say that, to point out that it's inconsistent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Who wants to go?
I just wanted to address the issue of cost questions on the survey, because we had this discussion about cost questions on the survey in committee. There were multiple questions that had to do with costs and their effects on, the potential effects on the citizens. One was question 13. Per the study, continuing backyard pickup will cost more over time than moving to curbside automated pickup. Understanding that, which of the following would you prefer? 1, keeping backyard pickup with an additional fee, or implementing curbside automated pickup with no additional fee. We removed that because the decision makers in the room said, we're not doing that. So we shouldn't suggest to our citizens that that is a potential outcome that they need to worry about. We're not going to do that. We're not implementing a fee. We decided that as decision makers. We should not have that question on the survey. There was another question about cost. As you may know, the cost of recycling has increased due to lower market demand of recycled materials and restrictions regarding what can be recycled. Many cities that receive revenue from recycling are now paying for the service. Based on that information, would you, how important is it that University Heights continue its recycling program? And we had several options there that included that the cost should be passed on to citizens, discontinuing, not important. We removed that because, as you remember, Mayor, you've already noted, I voted against the recycling at an increased rate. This was a question I could probably get behind. We decided as decision makers in the room, we're not doing that. We've decided about that. And I got on board with that because we've made that decision. We're not revisiting it. We're going to continue with backyard recycling, despite the fact that there's some additional costs. So why are we asking our citizens if they would support it with or without an additional cost when we've already made that decision? And there are several other questions that went to the idea that there could be an additional cost to citizens that nobody on this council was willing to actually implement. And so what the feeling was at committee when we addressed this was that we should not have these questions that may sway a person's opinion in one way or another based on a cost increase, which is a fallacy. We aren't passing that on in the way of a fee or a tax increase or any of that right now. And part of any consensus building effort is to make sure that individuals are brought along. At the end of the day, the people that elected me may not agree with every decision that I make. But if I bring them along in that process, allow them to be heard, allow them to provide their input, then I think that I can stand behind the decisions that I make even when they are uncomfortable. And as I've said, I anticipate that the decision that I will have to make on this issue is going to be uncomfortable. I don't think that we will be able to sustain backyard trash pickup in this city. When I make that decision, I want to say to the several people that came to our public hearings, that came and said, I cannot do this, I am too old, I will have to leave my home, I will not be able to do this, I can't carry this down, I will hurt myself. Send out a survey, you ask these questions, that I worked with an expert in the field to create the most unbiased survey possible, and I sent it out. And after I received that data, I made the decision. And it may be uncomfortable for you, you may not agree with it, it may cause you strife, but I believe it is in the best interest of the city as a whole. And I can't do that if the survey that gets sent out suggests to residents that there are going to be increases in fees or potential taxes that nobody is actually willing to implement. And so that is the reason that cost, when it came to solid waste collection and cost related to continuing our recycling, was removed. Because at the end of the day, we were going to debate this issue and come up with a solution. So that's all I wanted to say on that issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think it's worth noting that the recycling issue has changed over time, and that question wouldn't even be pertinent at this point, because the recycling markets have improved, and communities like Chagrin Falls are actually getting paid for the recyclables. And Cleveland got a bid where they stood to be paid $10 a ton for their recyclables. And we expect to see, when the Eastside Consortium goes out, it'll be quite likely that there will be bids where not only are they be cheaper than these prices that we have here in this contract, whether it's in this option, whether it's bagged or loose, but that they stand to be paid as well. It is quite possible that is what's going to happen. We don't know, because I don't have a crystal ball. We haven't had the bids yet. But we are at a point, though, where there are costs that ought to be contemplated, opportunity costs that could be asked about, trade-offs between whether you get this service or something else. I mean, Mr. Rock brought up a very good point. What do you get if you don't get this? And it's one of the things that we've heard constantly from residents. It's like, I pay so much in taxes, at least I get this one thing. And they're right. It is the one thing you do get, because that is how we spend your money. There are other things we could be spending your money on. We don't have a community center. We don't have year-round community programming. We don't have senior programming, but we have this one thing. Those are the kinds of things that we ought to be asking about. No, I don't want to raise taxes. I don't want to raise anybody's taxes either. I do not support tax increase, and we don't need one. What we do need to do is live within our means and live reasonably and still be able to provide all the things that people in this community expect and get in communities like ours, but don't get here. Instead of, they get backyard pickup, but they don't get year-round programming. They don't get a place to go. We don't offer all these other services that other communities do because this is how we spend our money, and there is a better way. And those are the sorts of things we should be asking about. All that stuff was lost in this particular survey, and those are the kinds of questions that I think ought to be asked.
Call the question.
Mrs. Thomas, you call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
This is on the emergency.
This is on
This
suspension.
Oh, yeah, this should be on
Just let
the
me know.
suspension of the rules first. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. So,
Mrs.
2 votes. First on the suspension.
Mrs. Lakeville?
Aye.
Mr. Rod?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
And then on the main motion.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Lakeville?
Aye.
Mr. Rod?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next is item D, ordinance 2022-22, amending codified ordinance section 1246.01 entitled General Provisions for the purpose of expanding membership of the Architectural Review Board and declaring an emergency. This is on emergency. Mr. McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, this is the ordinance that would expand membership of the ARB. There were 3 revisions made to codified ordinance section 1246.01. The first is in subsection C1, where the number of members is expanded from 3 to 5. The second change is in subsection C4. In that section, I included language that relates to the staggering of terms during 2022, but otherwise leaves the specifics of how members' terms will be staggered to council to decide on the floor. I would note that what I've drafted indicates that terms are for 3 years and that at least one term will expire each year. That's a little bit different from an apples to apples change. The way it was working before, you had, or at least in theory, was that you had 3 members and you had staggered terms 3, 2, 1 in duration originally. You could replicate that with 5-year terms and have appointments of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, although I would suggest that a 5-year term would be a term that's perhaps too lengthy not to ask a citizen to commit. So in any event, this retains the 3-year terms and allows you to stagger them seating on the floor. And then the last revision, it was made to subsection D, which I included language that says approval of an application submitted to the ARB shall require the affirmative vote of a majority of a quorum. That's to make sure that the ARB remains more accessible to those folks who have projects that need their review and not less accessible by virtue of needing a majority of all members.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. McConnell.
Yeah.
Mrs. Blanco.
I really want to thank Law Director McConville. He had the wisdom of Solomon during this discussion and came up with this proposed expansion of the board to include our valued, experienced members as well as some fresh faces who are very talented but have not had that essential experience in our community. So I want to thank you. This was, I think, a perfect solution.
Thank you. Mr. Rock.
I just have a question on the item. It's section C, subsection 4, about except in the case of one resident in 2022, in which case the term shall be staggered so that at least one term expires every 3 years. I guess I'm confused on the wording. Every position would expire within 3 years. It's just that some would be in a 2-year term or a 1-year term, their first what this is saying, at least only one term is going to expire in 3 years. That's how I'm reading it.
You're right, it should say is at least one term expires each year.
Each year, yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. White?
Yeah, thank you. I have 2 points. One is, it says numerous times registered architect. I don't know what the council's feeling is registered in Ohio versus, and I would actually defer to Councilman Rock if there's a difference between Ohio and other states in their laws, that's something that we need to contemplate.
So I'll just tell you, so I'm licensed in the state of Ohio to practice architecture. It took me 10 years. So I had it, in the state of Ohio, you have to have, nowadays, a master's degree. You have to have a professional degree, but those schools in Ohio offer a professional degree for a bachelor of architecture. They don't have that anymore, so you have to get a master of architecture now. So, and then you have internship requirements, testing requirements in the state of Ohio. I think now it's down to 5 or 6. I took 7 tests.
6 tests.
The 6, now they keep lowering. They're trying to get more people to become licensed, so there's not enough of us in the world. And then pay your fee, you gotta do community service, and then the other requirement in the state of Ohio is that you have continuing education requirements. In Ohio, you need 12 hours per year of health, safety, and welfare. Now, other states have different requirements. So I had people practicing at our firm who wanted to go a different route, where they didn't want to get a master's degree, so they got a license in Arizona that doesn't require that. There's some people in our practice who don't want to do continuing education, so they got a license in Pennsylvania that doesn't require the 12 hours of health, safety, and welfare requirements. Each state has different rules. I would argue, though, and I guess it's just on the comfort of the council members here, but I think you should be licensed in the jurisdiction in which you're practicing. In my opinion, I can't stand drawings in any other state unless I have a license in that state. So I shouldn't be reviewing drawings in those states either. If that makes sense.
Are any of our members on curve?
Oh, and that's a good question. So I don't know if they are or not. So NCARB is actually a really good tool to get licensed in other states. NCARB is the National Council for Architecture Review Boards, and it's basically, I used to be an NCARB member, and then I kept it because I wanted to mention out of Ohio, but then this is my home, so I'm not going anywhere. So I dropped NCARB, but it's a tool so that you can get licensed in a different state through reciprocity. That was the word. And so like my boss, for instance, I help him get licensed in other states. He's licensed, I think, in like 12 states. So because he is NCARB, he just has to write a check. Although he just got dinged in New York, they want him to take a test. So he's been practicing architecture for 40 years, but now he has to take a test for the state of New York. Because there's certain requirements that they have that they feel Ohio license not good enough for whatever reason. So Ohio is not the strictest. I would say California, Florida, New York are probably stricter, but we're a pretty strict state when it comes to licensing and accreditation.
So I would maybe make a suggestion, and I don't know if this is appropriate for the law director, but that one board member should have, at least one board member should have certification in the state of Ohio. I don't know the tolerance for everybody else's.
I would like to see more than one.
I mean, I'd like to see, especially since we're expanding the board, that we're not making it too great a hurdle to fill all 5 positions over time. I mean, we got 5 good people now, but years down the road, if we have fewer architects living in this community, right now we're requiring registered architects, we're requiring that they be residents. Only if there is not a sufficient number of registered architects available, one member, maybe from a related profession, maybe what Mrs. Weiss is saying, we could say that one is registered in the state of Ohio, but maybe at the same time we loosen some of the other things here. Maybe, that maybe a preference is given to residents, but we would look outside the community. Or maybe 2 or even 3 members could be from a related profession. We have in other communities members of design boards that aren't necessarily registered architects. But at this point, we were it's probably a good time to look at this because obviously we have it in front of us now. And those weren't things that were discussed when we were fashioning the compromise as to what we were going to do this time. But since we're here, I suppose now is as good a time as any to discuss those things. Thoughts, Mr. Gould?
So I would have more of a concern about an individual who doesn't live in the city making these decisions versus their registrations. And I think perhaps if we put this in here, your concerns would be addressed in the second sentence of section C1. So if a sufficient number of registered architects are not available, one member may be from another related profession if the person is demonstrating interest, experience, or knowledge in architecture. I mean, so we at that point, we're like, if you're not registered, it's not even registered in the state of Ohio, you don't have to be registered, you have to have interest. Like,
I'm interested in architecture. I don't belong on an
I like buildings. So like, I think it allows for a lot of leeway in terms of the administration's ability to make the appointments. I would say though, I think the way that this is stated in C1 allows for the administration to make a broader range of appointments than it otherwise would if we made that a requirement. The body can always decide that an individual appointment isn't qualified. So I'll just, we have Ms. Schwen, I believe it was. Quinn. And she is not registered in the state of Ohio. She's registered in the state of Pennsylvania. She has a broad range of experience. She has some great education. I like what some of her experience would bring in terms of her view to the board. I would not vote against her based on her qualifications. Nor would I want the mayor's hands to be limited to be able to present her as an option. We always have the option to say, listen, I think that there are more Ohio registered architects. I think it's really important to have on the board. The balance is off now. We already have 2 years down the line, right? We already have Ms. Quinn on the board. Whoever we appoint next year is not registered in Ohio. We have too many non-Ohio. We really need you to find somebody else, and we're not going to authorize this appointment. It's always an option, and I would hate to have someone with Ms. Quinn's caliber not be able to be presented to us as an option.
Well, and to your point, Mayor, if I may, that's why I just suggested one registered architect as opposed to, and then like you said in sentence 2, I mean, it's very broad in there. But just to have that one person, there are certain nuances of Ohio that I think.
I mean, I would be comfortable with the majority of. So we could change that language to say a registered architects, comma, the majority of which must be registered in the state of Ohio, comma, so that, because I would have concerns if the people making the decisions weren't registered here, and if Mayor, we come to a point down the line where I can't find anyone that's registered in the state of Ohio that lives in University Heights. Y'all are going to have to make a change because there's nobody here that we can just change the law.
I just don't want to see us with an architectural board of review with people who simply have an interest or somewhat of knowledge making those decisions. It's common sense.
Yes, that's Mrs. Sims.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor or Mr. Rock, what are some similar professions? I think that was a comment. Like the draftsman, what are we talking, what's similar?
I mean, I would argue, if you have an architectural review board, you have to have an understanding of architecture.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I mean, design is interesting, but I'm not sure.
I mean, I'm interested in medical, but I'm not going to perform
I'm
operations.
interested in architecture, but I would just not.
But Ms. Wynn's credentials I think are fine for our architecture review. The majority of the projects that come before our architecture review board are garages, window replacements, small additions. I mean, there's nothing huge being built in University Heights yet. I mean,
That's my concern.
And yet there is a point.
I hope so. But I think would agree that the majority of the body could be registered in Ohio. They don't have to be the majority on the quorum that day, but I think the majority of the body would suffice. And furthermore, not only do I want to, I support Ms. Glenn being on this body. She was recommended by the Architecture Review Board specifically. So I feel that they've already vetted her, and so did the administration, and we got to meet her at the last council meeting, or I think it was the last meeting. So I don't have a problem.
You know, so to that point, to have, there is some sort of uniformity in University Heights, you know, I mean, there is also some individuality, but within a certain parameter, you know, so I would hate to see someone coming out, you know, people coming out that start approving things that really start making the city look mismatched, you know, and I don't know much more about that, but for whatever it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Brewer.
So just reading as amended, that first paragraph, that first sentence, currently reads, the Architectural Review Board shall consist of 5 registered architects who shall be residents of the city of University Heights. And if we change that to, the Architectural Review Board shall consist of 5 registered architects, comma, the majority of whom shall be registered as architects by the state of Ohio, comma, and who shall be residents of the city of University Heights. Is that an amendment that would satisfy those who have the concern around that?
Yes.
I'm comfortable with that.
Mayor, I will make a motion to amend the first line of the section C1 of proposed 1246.01 general provisions attached as Exhibit A to read, the Architectural Review Board shall consist of 5 registered architects, comma, the majority of whom shall be registered as architects by the state of Ohio, comma, and who shall be residents of the city of University Heights.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gould. Mr. McConville and Mrs. Thomas, do you have the amendment? Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blankville. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, the amendment carries.
I've emailed that to both you, Kelly, and you.
Thank you.
Similarly, I would ask that there be an amendment to section C4 so that the words at the very end of that section, every 3 years, be deleted and substituted with words each year, so that it will read, in which case the term shall be staggered so that at least one term expires each year.
Is there a motion?
So second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Weiss, second by Mr. Rock. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll on the amendment?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Are there any other amendments anybody would care to offer?
Mayor, make a motion to pass ordinance.
I just clarification. Do we need to approve or appoint before this is passed, or then first pass it and then do the appointments?
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor, make a motion to pass ordinance 2022-22 on emergency, as amended.
Okay, motion to approve on emergency as amended by Mr. Gould. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Blankfeld. Any discussion? We'll take 2 votes. First is on the suspension of the rules. Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, and now the main motion.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Before I proceed, just as a point of order, Mr. McConville, should I sign the copy Kelly has so I can sign it along right now before we proceed?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Who has the, you're the red
Go
one.
ahead.
I mean, mine's got,
We should probably eliminate the amendments.
Yes.
mine's got really stuff. Sorry about that. That's that.
Mayor, you'll re-sign a pretty copy? Sorry, you'll re-sign a pretty copy?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, just do it again. I can see like the publishers, like University Heights sent us this. They're cross out.
I was gonna put the brown copy and seal of approval on this one. There's somebody else needs to do that. I didn't mean to emulate him. Oh, geez. All right. I use a shirt though.
All right. Mayor, I just don't know if we have to, and I appreciate if we want to go into executive session to do it, but for brevity's sake, can we just bounce the election deal?
I think it's actually better for you on the record.
Okay,
So
great.
So, but I'd be just as fine. Before we proceed to the next item, we're kind of bringing this all out into the sunlight. I think what we were intending to do was I would pick somebody on behalf of council. This is why I don't know if that was going to be you or somebody else, but pick one. It would do somebody picks three, somebody picks three, somebody picks two, somebody picks two, whoever's not picks the one.
So Mr. Rock actually spoke, he told me he spoke to the current members, and
Okay.
they individually came to consensus on how they wanted to stagger their terms. So I think that eases up the whole process.
What do we have?
Okay, so Mr. Kiley, whose employment had been in flux because he was traveling in North Carolina back, which is why he missed a few meetings in the last year. The circumstances of his employment may be changing or maybe not be, so there's so much uncertainty that he preferred to be in the 1-year term, the term that expires in 1 year. That was a preference he had, and the other members were okay with that. And then the other two members, one could be in a term that expires in 2 years and one for 3. And then they both were excited about the 2 incoming members, not having the 1 year because they would like them to really be solid in the ARB, so one having a 3 and one having a 2.
So the idea is that one of the new people gets a 3 and one gets 2, and one of the existing people gets a 3 and one gets a 2. Was there any consensus as to who would get which?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, we can take them in order and just kind of pick them along the way, or.
What about the new one? For your appointments, Mayor, do you care about the order of the 3 or the 2 for Mr. Chesney or Ms. Swain?
Yeah, I would suggest a 3 for Chesney and a 2 for Wynn.
And then, do you mind if I just ask a question in terms of order for the others, members of council, do you mind the 3 for Mr. Cato and the 2 for Mr., I'm sorry, how do you pronounce his last name?
Kuchar.
Thank you.
Yes. That sounds good.
I know that Luke likes to ask the question, or likes Lisa to be asked the question. If any member of council would like it to be done individually, please let us know and we'll call them individually. But if not, Mayor, can I just make a blanket amendment to the order of things because we have them number here already.
I plan on abstaining on one of the recommendations, so we should probably do it individually, sorry.
Can we make the amendment at least as a whole, and then you can vote on them individually?
The amendments on,
The years, because right now, it's for, the appointments are for 3 years on all of them.
So because we haven't read any of them yet, Mr. McConville, I simply read them as 3, 2, and 1. Then I guess each one, we don't have to formally amend them, because I will have read them as we are doing them. Okay, very good. Then I have as our 3 and our 2 business improvement, and then 2 for Coutre, 3 for Cato, and 1 for Tyler. So I will proceed then with item E on the agenda. This is a motion to confirm the appointment of Tommy Chesnes to the University Heights Architectural Review Board for a term of 3 years, effective February 1, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. King. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by, was that Mrs. Blanco?
Yes, it's just quick.
Oh, I
Click
heard,
on the mic.
I heard Mrs. Blanco, but I saw you move, so yes, okay. All right. Okay, so second by Mrs. Blanco. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Okay, motion carries. Item F, motion to confirm the appointment of Lily Twin to the University Heights Architectural Review Board for a term of 2 years, effective February 1, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gould. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Weiss. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next is item G. Motion to confirm the reappointment of Michael Coutre to the University Heights Architectural Review Board for a term of 2 years, effective February 1, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mrs. Sacks. Is there a second? Second. I'll take the second by Mr. King. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Next is item H. Motion to confirm the reappointment of Michael Cato to the University Heights Architectural Review Board for a term of 3 years, effective February 1, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Blanco. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sacks. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Abstain.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Very good. Motion carries. And then letter I, a motion to confirm the reappointment of Richard Kiley to the University Heights Architectural Review Board for a term of 1 year, effective February 1, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Sacks. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Weiss. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Motion carries. Okay, next is item J, and I will inform all 5 of them in writing tomorrow. Motion to accept bid from Top Level Lawn Service LLC of Cleveland, Ohio for the 2022 yard nuisance abatement program with the amounts not to exceed $35 per house for high grass, $30 per house for shrub trimming, $25 per hour for leaf cleanup, and $25 per hour for debris removal. Mr. Engelbrecht.
Yes, good evening. Top Level Lawn Service is the same contractor that the city has used for the last 2 years. They submitted the lowest bid. The bids were advertised, or the bid was advertised March 24th and March 31st. We opened them April 6th. Myself, Ms. Thomas, and Mr. Corney viewed them all, and Top Level Lawn Service once again won out. So that's what we're going to be going with. I request that you accept this motion just so that we can get to work once the grass really starts growing in a week or so.
All right. Yes, Mr. Rock.
Are these the same prices as last year, or is there an increase?
I believe so. I believe they're the same price.
Because you know gas has really gone up, so
Right.
you could probably increase these a few dollars.
Right, no, they're the same class as last year.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Gould.
I asked this because I just had my spring cleanup. Is there ever any way for citizens to like sign up? Like, if I can get my leave removed for $25 an hour, I would like to sign up for that. And I really do mean like, so I'm talking about the idea of like sidewalks, right? And if we had a sidewalk rate where I have to come in and repair your sidewalk and it's way lower than it's going to cost me to do it because the city's going to implement it on me, you know, go ahead and do it because I'd rather pay that fee than the contractor fee for cement. Is this ever the type of thing that we could have people sign up for?
Is that a conflict?
Well, if I may, no, for a couple of reasons. One, that's not what we did. We bid for nuisance abatement, not for signups across the community. But two, this is what we pay them, but we bill the residents a fee on top of this as a fine or a penalty or a charge of some sort.
It's an assessment.
An assessment.
Yes.
Thank you. So, and
Which
then if
actually
the
goes
resident
under property
does,
taxes.
yes, if it doesn't pay it, then we're back here in September. We get that for the new folks here. There'll be this marathon meeting right after Labor Day, where one of the things that we'll have are all the assessments for all these that didn't get paid, and all the residents who hear about it and are angry about it. They're going to show up and say, "Don't you dare put that on my property tax." And I know guys like that. They're really grumpy when that kind of thing comes up. So it's always adds a little spice to that meeting. Yeah. Anyway, Mr. Engelbrecht, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. That was a request that council accept the motions that we can get moving in the time.
So moved. Okay. Oh, was that a motion? Oh, very good. So the motion to accept the bid by Mr. Gould, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm going to take it from Mr. King. I think he was just a little faster. Any discussion? Mrs. Thomas, we call roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Next is item K. Motion to approve the purchase of pool chemicals for 2022 from Sal Chemical. Mr. Corning.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for the purchase of pool chemicals that we use up at Purpose Pool through the summer. We are part of a consortium group of about 8 cities on the east side of town. The city of Mayfield Heights runs the bidding process, and this year Sal Chemical was the lowest and best bid over OP Aquatics, who did not bid. So I'm recommending that we award the chemical bid for pool chemicals this year to Sal. And I don't really have an amount, but I have an estimated cost of $18,000 to $21,000 for all the different chemicals that we use. Provided you a little list there of previous pricing. This year's price did increase significantly, about 200%, or $1.43 extra per gallon for chlorine. But we will need these chemicals, so I request council's authorization to go with Sal Chemical.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Corning. Is there a motion?
I'll say with the mayor.
Okay, motion.
And I think that should be at the not to exceed, correct? Let's establish the amount.
Not to exceed
21. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of pool chemicals for 2022 from Sal Chemical not to exceed $21,000.
Okay, very good. We have a motion by Mr. Brock. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Sacks. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mrs. Blanco?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise? Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Very good, motion carries. Next is item L, motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing legal proceedings, personnel, real estate matters. The administration does not have anything to enter into executive session over this evening. So we will then move on to reports and communications from the directors of departments, etc. We'll start with finance. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I just want to go over some highlights of the financial activity reports that I sent out last Thursday. Through the first quarter, ending March 31st, our general fund revenue amounted to $4,619,835.94. That's 30.8% of the annual general fund estimate for this year. So things are looking good so far. That revenue increase, excuse me, is primarily attributed to higher income tax and property tax collections. And the reports will detail the specifics of that. RETA collections are up 7.9% over last year. In 2021, the first quarter collections were $2.47 million. This year, that number is approximately 2.67. That entire difference of $197,000 to $200,000 is almost 100% attributable to an increase in withholding taxes. Individual net profit collections so far are within 0.5% of what they were last year. We'll see how we do in April, and I hope everybody got their taxes filed. Today was the deadline. Total revenue for all funds in the first quarter, that includes the general fund, was $6.07 million. That's about 5% more than the estimates we had through the first quarter. I listed, I won't go through them here, but I listed all the assessments, since we were talking about special assessments, what we collected in the first half collections through the county. They were all well over the original estimates for the year. As I stated previously, the county's done a good job in increasing their delinquent tax collections, and we are reaping the benefit of that to some extent. In May, I'll have three transfers, from the general fund, one to the street maintenance fund for $115,000, one to the payroll stabilization fund. That is the fund that's set up for once every 11 years there is an extra pay period. And by accumulating resources during those 11 years, we'll have the funds to make that extra payment when the time comes. And there's also a $100,000 transfer from the general fund to the facilities improvement fund. So all three of those transfers were budgeted as part of the permanent budget. Our expenses in the first quarter were a little over $3.5 million. That comes out to approximately 21.2% of budgeted appropriations through March. Total expense for the first quarter for all funds is $5.23 million. That amounts to approximately 23% of budgeted appropriations through March. So from the expense side, we are also doing well in terms of measurements to our target rate through the first quarter. Statement of cash position, our starting unexpended balance at the beginning of this year was $5.34 million. That was in the general fund. The ending unencumbered balance for the first quarter that's unencumbered, so that includes the encumbrances, is $2.38 million. For all funds, our unexpended balance totals $10.76 million as of March 31st. And there's some other comments and details in that report. If anybody has any questions, please get in touch with me. I'd be happy to walk you through all the details. A couple of updates as well. We're finishing up the audit for both the CIC and the city. CIC is on a little faster track than the city itself. We're hoping to have a CIC meeting in the next week or two to approve the financial reports in the IRS filing for 2021. That'll be going out to everybody, and I think there's a couple other agenda items as well. But we need those approved before month end so I can get all those filed with the state and the IRS. And that is about it for me. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Kennedy? All right. Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. We will now move to Director of Law, Mr. McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, Council, the Law Department was asked to draft an ordinance regarding soliciting and peddling. I did provide a draft ordinance to Mr. Gould along with Police Chief Rogers. I'll await their comments on that ordinance and we'll turn it back around so that it can be presented back to the committee. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Any questions for Mr. McConnell?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr.
Just to say that we'll put that on the agenda for discussion at our safety committee meeting before the first regularly scheduled meeting of next month.
Okay, thank you. Just for that clarification, do you want it up for first reading in the next meeting, or just have it at safety and we'll go over there?
No, I think in an abundance of caution, I think that's just to have a discussion. I'd like your input as well. If there's anything that the administration, would like to see, we can put it on for the end of May. So, I think be ahead of the summer knocking, although
sure,
clearly it's starting already. So,
oh yeah. Saw they were at my door last week. Mr. McConnell, if you haven't already, could you forward me a copy? Yes. Thank you. All right, very good. Public Safety Police, Chief Rogers.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Chief. No report. Public Safety Fire, Chief Perkos being excused this evening, and he has no report. Now turn to service, Mr. Corney.
Just what I've reported in the past, the month of April is yard waste collection, so when it stops snowing, which it's supposed to do soon, it's supposed to be a beautiful weekend coming up. Get out there, get your bushes trimmed, and get your leaves to the curb, and we'll get them collected during April. That is it.
Very good. I like the aspirational tone that will actually happen with stuff at the end of the snow. Thank you, Mr. McCorney. Any questions for Mr. McCorney? Very good, thank you. We will then move to housing and community development. Mr. Engelbrecht.
Yes, good evening again. I sent an email to you, to council members regarding the rendering for the curb bump outs, along with the past motion, which was, or the motion in the past, which allowed for the funding of up to $300,000 for the grant. So the request for council to approve the grant, at least at this point, is a bit premature. I got in touch with NOACA, and it's not one of the next steps, at least at this point, that's due by April 30th. There's two next steps primarily. The first being the award letter being signed. The second would be the scope of services, which is actually being done by Mr. Chudy, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. I really appreciated that drawing. I like those wide markers crossing the street. It made an impact on me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. Okay, city engineer, Mr. Chin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Construction season is started. We have given notice to proceed for the contractor on Traymore, the water line replacement. On Traymore, there is from Warrensville Center down to Hillbrook, it's about 1,600 feet of water line to be replaced, and their notice to proceed is April 25th. At the same time, we gave a notice to proceed to the contractor for the Cedar Road sewer repairs, and that notice to proceed is May 2nd. So before your next meeting, those two projects will be started. The big contract is Cedar Road resurfacing, and the state of Ohio has given notice to proceed for April 25th for the contractor per construction. Phase 1 is from Miramar to Green Road. They'll be starting on the South Euclid side of the road as far as construction goes. Maintenance and traffic then will be on our side of the road, which is the south side of Cedar, starting in April to approximately sometime around June 1st. And then they'll switch to the other side of the road and complete everything between Miramar and Green, and then switch from to phase 2, which is South Taylor to Fenwick. All that is subject to weather and conditions of how they do, but the contract has to be completed by October 31st by contract. So it'll be 2 phases. There'll be 1 lane in each direction in each phase with construction on the other side of the road. I've given the administration and the police dispatch emergency phone numbers of the contractor and the ODOT contacts should any questions arise from any citizens. That's all I have.
Very good, thank you, Mr. Judy. Any questions for Mr. Judy? I think we're all eager to see construction season commence.
Are you?
And I'll be finding my way down Fairmount Boulevard. Very good. Communications and civic engagement, Mr. Cook is excused. He's in Cincinnati with his daughter. I just learned moments ago that it's official. His daughter is going to go to Cincinnati. Congratulations to the newest Bearcat. Economic Development, Mrs. Drucker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to inform you today about a few businesses. We have 3 new businesses that are going to be opening in May. The first one is a clothing store, Timeless Fashions. That's going to be located at 2243 Warrenville Center Road. That's the former Rosita space. So those of you who aren't familiar, it's the building where my office is, and it's that corner office right out the front next to the barber shop. So they're looking to open the first week of May. The second place that will be opening is Drip Apparel. That is located at 2181 South Taylor Road. That is in University Corners. That was the former Sophia space. That was another clothing store. So they're also looking to open by the first week of May. They're pretty much built out. I think they're just waiting for their final overhead sign, and I believe they were good on all their permits. So they may even be able to open a little, maybe by the last week of April. And then the third business opening is a new tailor seamstress, which is Amy Roth and Company. That will also be located at 2245 Warrenville Center Road. That'll be in the second floor, same building where I'm at, upstairs on the second floor. And she is opening actually on May 1st. And then just an update on the South Taylor place. That's the Canez townhomes. The preliminary utility work is still underway. They do have their first building permit for their first building, but that's not going to get started until all that preliminary utility work is completed. If you recall, there were utilities that ran underground through those lots that had to be moved prior to any building to begin. The permit that they did get the first building permit for is the northeast build unit. That's units 27 to 30. That's the one right off by Wynn Road. They believe that's the one that they're going to start, that they could start rather than up at Taylor. If anything changes, I'll give you a report on that. And those are all, and then with the new stores, that will then bring our vacancy rate down below 5.5%. So it's actually 5.48% once these 3 stores open. Yes.
Very good, thank you. Next question?
Yes.
Mrs. Michael.
Do we have an anticipated date when the contractor's going to be able to start building for those townhouses?
No, it's whenever they have to get all the utility work done.
So we don't have a long idea of how long that may take?
No, as of when I talked to them last week, they just said the preliminary work is still ongoing, and we'll let you know when we're gonna break ground. So definitely, I'll keep the council posted there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay,
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Drucker. We will now turn to reports and reports from standing committees. And taking no action thereon, we'll start building housing Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a number of things that we're going to continue to address. The next is something that Prosecutor Cicero has been working with us on, looking at a very comprehensive review of the codified ordinances and how they relate to building and housing. So he will, he and I are working together on that, along with Mr. Engelbrecht, and that will probably first come before our committee in May, which is the second meeting.
Very good. Mrs. Springfield, does your committee also have the engineering fees matter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Community outreach, Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. Been working with the chairpeople of the Technology Advisory Commission, Christine Hudak and Jian Jing, on the RFP for managed security services for the city of University Heights. We got a template back from Paul Huckenberg of Quinn and Associates. It's very comprehensive, and we are plugging in the information that is needed for that. We have sent questions off to the city and Starfish to get the necessary information to complete the RFP, and hoping to have a meeting of the Technology Advisory Commission next week to review a draft of that document, so we can kind of get this out the door and get some permanent IT services for the city.
That's awesome.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. King. Economic Development, Mr. Rock. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rock. Finance, Mrs. Weiss. Thank you, Mrs. Weiss. Recreation, Mr. Cooney is not here. Does anybody have a report? Seeing none, no report. Safety, Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mayor. As I said, we'll have the peddler's ordinance on for next time. We'll be meeting with the chiefs. I'll be meeting with the chiefs on Monday, as well as our prosecutor, to set the agenda for the safety committee meeting with the peddler's ordinance and the presentation from the city engineer and JD lining. Striping, excuse me, I anticipate we'll probably need to notice, Kelly, the meeting at 5:30 rather than 6 o'clock, just to allow for additional time, but I'll confirm that next week.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gould. Service and Utilities, Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you, Mayor Brennan. At this point, there was a meeting scheduled on Tuesday, May 3rd at 7 p.m., but we are going to reschedule. So there'll be a different doodle. I'll follow up with Ms. Kelly after I follow up with the gentleman at Kimball. That will allow full administration to be present as well as members of the council and the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Committee of the Whole, Mrs. Weiss. Okay, very good. Are there any reports of special committees and the taking of action thereon? Seeing none, any unfinished or miscellaneous business? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So,
motion to adjourn by Mr. Gould. Is there a second? Before we proceed with the motion to adjourn, I told Mr. Schaefer, and I told Mrs. Drucker that, and I told Mr. Cook, though he's not here, that with the passing of Gilbert Gottfried, I had every intention of conducting this meeting in his voice as it should be. So,
Mrs. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Sachs. Mrs. Plainville.
Aye.
Mr. Rock. Aye. Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Motion carries. We're adjourned.